Hell, can you hear me? God damn it, I know you can hear me. Open up the podcast doors. Jeez. Hal. God damn it, Hal. Just open up. I know you can goddamn hear me. You better open offer. Jesus, we're on. I'll talk to you later, Hal. Hello, everybody, and welcome to let's brighten up the lights here. We have technology. Welcome to the Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies live video podcast. It's like a film studies course if you're going to Greendale Community College. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Today, we're going to be looking at, if I can find my stuff here. Whoops, not that. This 2001, A Space Odyssey. Anyway, we're going to be taking a deep dive into that. And you know what? A million lame log lines out there. The one I wrote, and bear with me, I will pull it up right now. A meditation on the nature of humanity from our prehistoric roots as early hominids through the discovery of evidence of an extraterrestrial intelligence. Hope you can hear that. To one individual's experience of the next phase of human evolution in orbit around Jupiter. 2001, A Space Odyssey has been hailed since its 1968 premiere as a true cinema masterpiece. Oh, anyway, there's a quick take on that. Just to kind of get into the ideological ingredients, get that out of the way. Would it have earned a reframe stamp? No. Was it union made? Yes. On the story end of it, does it pass the Bechdel test? Maybe. There's a tiny sliver. Probably not. Anyway, so maybe, but probably not. And what else do we got here? Oh, class analysis, class consciousness. No, that was not Stanley Kubrick's thing. Like most petty bourgeois filmmakers of the day and of now. So with that out of the way, I think it's time to bring my wonderful co-host, my co-pilot, let's say hopefully the surviving Frank Poole to my Dave Bowman, or vice versa. Let's get him on here, Mr. Jim Chloboyko. Hello, Jim. How you doing, man?
Hi all. How's everyone doing?
I know I'm good.
I'm breathing earth air. I'm not at the whim of a computer from Winnipeg. More on that later, but it's all good.
Good. Well, listen, good to see you here, man, and glad you're okay breathing natural air. Unlike me with this jerk over my shoulder.
That was an excellent starting, by the way.
Thank you very much. I thought it was a good gag. And actually, and this is like a perfect segue, in part due to, our awesome, one of our awesome regulars, great friend of the show. Let's bring them, and I think it's time to say hi to the chat. Walt, our friend Walt, Vlad65 actually came up with that great gag, and I'm like, I ran with it.
Oh, yes.
To be perfectly honest, Jim, it may be one of the reasons we're a little late. Technical difficulties may have been my ambition got away with me a little bit. Okay. All right.
You can't miss a minute.
No. Well, I thought it was a good opportunity, though, right?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
mean, but what I'm saying is tune in from the start because you never know what you're going to get. It's yeah, it was a great beginning there.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, we've got oh, all right. So let's I'm kind of bouncing all around here. All right. Dragon Movie Guy. Hey, great to see you, man. DMG. All right. And the aforementioned member, Walt, Vlad65, one of the founding members, one of the original 3 members of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars. Great to see you here,
Yes.
Vlad. Oh, the
Howdy.
Upside Dan. Woo.
Woo.
Here, actually, and I think we owe Vlad one of these. So
Yes, definitely.
there we go. All right, people saying hi to each other. Always nice to see. And yeah, so we've got a few people watching, few people lurking, which is always good. Hey, it's all watch time to me, baby. Now let me get this out of the way. I think it's time to put, you know what? We deserve a little music, Jim.
Yes. Perhaps some Strauss.
Perhaps
or
some
a nice
Strauss.
or a nice waltz.
Absolutely,
some sort.
my friend. Can you hear that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great.
Ooh,
and if it's too
lasers.
loud, if anyone, Restream has come through for us all, folks. We finally have some really good, solid volume controls. So if anyone's a little too quiet or a little too loud, let me know in the chat. You know what? And I'll get on it. And same with if the music's too loud. Like, I mean, we like to have it kind of in there. It sort of hides a lot of noise sins. But yeah, like radio in the background, not necessarily taking over the conversation, but giving it a little bass, like a carpet, you know, that the conversation can kind of feel comfortable over.
It's like a campfire in a horror movie, just in the background being maintained.
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly.
Welcome.
All right. Okay, so all right, Jim, let's get into it. Let's get started.
Sure.
First of all, why don't you give us your first thoughts? Give us a bit of a brief, like, super tight overview and
Sure.
your first thoughts. What were you thinking with this wonderful flick?
So, you know, this is one that's maybe a tad intimidating.
I shouldn't have even said wonderful, because I have some weird conflicting thoughts. My
Okay.
apologies, Jim. You continue.
No. Yeah, this one again, sort of like and Clyde. It's a tiny bit intimidating to approach because how many reams of paper, how many people have opined about this one over the years, and you know, our job is to bring some fresh new take or what have you, or just, you know, things that we notice in amongst all the culture that we consume. I noticed this happens to be the 3rd movie in a row that was musically kind of quiet in places. Of course, 2001's known for various symphonic pieces, so it's ridiculous to call it a silent, you know, a quiet movie. But there are great spaces. You know, Bonnie and Clyde has Foggy Mountain Breakdown, but they also have stretches of where there's almost no score. And same with Small Axe, where most of the music was diegetic. But anyway, yeah, so this is another one. And I sort of waited for everyone in my home to go to bed, and I watched it late at night. And just and I remember there's certain movies when you're young that are keys to the kingdom. That these are the not adult movies, but these are the grown-up, sophisticated movies that'll give you knowledge on the universe and insight into various other things. And so this was, and I remember distinctly watching this as a teenager, like reading Dune if you're too young, not necessarily getting it, but still appreciating it nonetheless. Yeah, and this one was really, again, a classic that it's super easy to watch. When you're in it, you're in it. I found it's a very strange approach. The quietness, the sort of the banality of the situation. You know, the dealing with food and dealing with all kinds of other supplies and little conversations and things like that. all leading up to like something that's pretty amazing. But that's interesting. There's a lot going on here, but and it's been such an influential movie. Christopher Nolan, who a lot of our watchers love, he was influenced. A whole generation of filmmakers was influenced by this, and this might have actually been the case where a movie sort of helped the genre transcend itself a little bit. I would say, going from the sort of monsters and maidens kind of thing to something a little more ambitious. So that was cool too. You tend to forget this was '68, and you can watch a lot of schlock from '68, and then this one, Kubrick took his time, knew what he was doing, had just like a crazy amount of confidence, and for somebody to actually be able to have an ending like that, I don't know if you could do that these days. But boy, he must have had an iron will, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of those meetings with young execs. But anyway, great movie, great Winnipeg Connection. Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but yeah, pretty fascinating. I wrote like way more than I did in my notes for movies usually, but
well,
yeah.
Jim, you mentioned a Winnipeg Connection. Is that something you can lay on us right now before we get into the breakdown? Why not? Let's hear it now.
Okay, and I was actually quite proud of myself. It's a little bit of a tangent, what we usually do, but hold on. So, Douglas Rain. Douglas James Rain, the voice of HAL 9000, is actually an actor. He passed away in 2018, I believe. I think on Remembrance Day, at the age of 90-ish. And he provided the voice of HAL. And I'd always been fascinated by this. And as a young freelance writer, I always wanted to sort of poke the roots, his Winnipeg roots. So I was sitting here on the weekend, I think it was Friday night, and I couldn't get into the library. At the library, they have these things called the Henderson directories that you'd never see these days. You could look up a last name, find out where the person lived, find out where that person worked, and check out all the other things too. So you could look up the Rain family and find out where they lived. I realized that I had access to some databases online just through my work and stuff like that. So I looked up old Winnipeg Tribune articles, and I found a couple of them. So I'll just read this aloud. I'm looking at a newspaper now. Wins again. Deserved honor has again come to little Douglas James Rain, son of Mr. and Mrs. J. Rain, 173 Oakwood Avenue, Winnipeg. Douglas has just been awarded exhibition honors in the divisional examinations in elocution in Trinity College, London, scoring 95 out of 100 marks and taking the first position in this division. His examiner wrote of him, "He is naturally gifted and will do well." This is Douglas's fourth examination in Trinity College. He secured honors in the last three. He is a pupil of Miss Jean Campbell, who ran a drama school in the city, and very well known in local dramatic circles, having played with many organizations and appearing several times with the John Holden Players during the last 2 seasons. So at this point, I believe he was 12 years old. I cut the date off, and there's articles, him going back as a reader during plays from the age of 8 onwards.
That's crazy.
173 Oakwood, by the way, is in Riverview, and it's about 2 blocks away from Riverview Center, which is a bit of a hospice. A lot of sort of cancer patients, and it might be known for that. Also close to Churchill High School, but just at the end of South Osborne.
Where I briefly attended.
For Winnipeg, for Winnipeggers. And the house is still standing, as is St. Mary's Academy, which is where one of his elocution competitions, I guess, took place. So a lot of neat trivia, and there's a great picture of him. We can maybe post it later, but there's a great picture of 12-year-old Douglas James Rain. He went on to co-found the Stratford scene in Stratford, Ontario, and it seems that he played just about every major role in the Shakespeare canon during his career. He was mostly theater actor. And the reason he got this job is because Stanley Kubrick was very much influenced by a National Film Board of Canada film called The Universe, and Douglas Rain was the narrator of that. So
that's crazy.
His chops and his sort of bona fides for being Hal go way back. And I found that I was just
local boy,
local boy, and just to find out where he lived and that the house was still standing and stuff. You could drive by it today, and I almost am knock knock knock. Hey, hey folks,
howdy.
Fun
so,
trivia.
Did you know?
Yeah. So anyway, that was my big research of the weekend.
You bet. Well, okay. Well, Jim, that like most times, I do agree with you. At the same time, there's a bit of tension in me. There's almost like, some of the words we've used with other filmmakers, I think can really work here more so, like next level. Overstuffed. I was almost like, okay, if you cut it here, if you cut out all this, you would have like a movie. It wouldn't be what it is, but you'd have a movie that kind of had a narrative. Or if you, and the other thing was just, I'll be crasser, Jim, balls, just balls. Like the first 3 minutes of this film, he's basically saying, you're all going to sit there and listen to this weird ass music because that's the way it is. And then an intermission with more weird ass mood setting. Well, and it's not an intermission where you can get up off your butt and go run and do something. It's you all need to take a break while I lay some more heavy crap on you, and you're all. And I mean, this was not his manner. I'm obviously being very shticky with it, but yeah, the balls on this guy, that commitment. The other thing was that there's, and like you said, Jim, like you really see we're going to do science fiction right. We're going to make this epic and like I'm going to say hard sci-fi in not just that it was technically as accurate as it could be, but when we're talking, and we'll get into this more later, but we're talking about themes and everything, it's the highest of high, it's big philosophy, existential questions, like, and again, just balls on them. Like, and it's a super crass way of putting it, but it's part of me is like, I'm thinking, boy, this guy has just moxie. Like, anyway. Quickly, slowly. Is it worth your time? Is it worth our audience's time?
I mean, I think it is.
2.5 hours of it.
2.5 hours. I don't think it's for everyone. And some people I can see just going, ugh, what is it? But I often think of how older members of my family would react to it. I don't think it's for everyone. It was worth my time for sure. And I hadn't seen it. I realize now probably.
It is one of our does it hold up, which is a question we'll get into later. But for me, I hadn't seen it in a long time. I'd seen that it was on TV. Sometimes you click by it or whatever. And I hadn't actually sat down and watched the whole thing. I was pleased with how smooth it moved, and it does take its time. There is a lot of, he could probably, I could see nervous studio execs saying, who are coked up and saying, hey, can we move this along a little bit? How long does it take the ship to meet with the other ship, or whatever? But interesting note, originally 161 minutes.
Oh, the times are all over the place. On Crave alone, it offers you a free version of 2 hours and 29 minutes. And then it offers you a $5 version for 2 hours and 21 minutes. Not sure what the distinction is. And there's another listing in Wikipedia that says 244 or something like that.
161 minutes was the original thing.
Yeah.
I have a book that I will plug later.
Okay.
I'm similar to you, Jim. Well, I'm going to say this, there is so much, like you said, so much ink spilled. You know what you're getting into. Yeah, I think it's, if you're into this kind of thing, if you're a student of film, of course you need to see this movie to see where some of these, but even if you're not, even if you're just super casual, watching this movie, you'll understand where a lot of film language, gags, this kind of stuff came from, where it, in a way, started. And so, yeah, I'd say it, but this is unlike Bonnie and Clyde, which was just a slam dunk. Yeah, watch it. Oh God. This is the qualified, is it worth your time? You know, I'm not, I wouldn't be saying it to everyone. You know, yeah, it's not that kind of movie, you know?
I think the hinge there, the hinge that it sort of pivots on, is patience. Like, if you're a patient enough movie watcher, not to do with attention span, but just you have to be a little patient for this. And also that the ending is, I sort of, it's amazing that it got made, because it's so puzzling and it's so sort of over the top that I really, maybe he had pictures of studio execs in compromising positions or something, but yeah, I don't think you'd see something that freaky these days.
I'll speak to this. Our good friend Vlad, Walt 65, recommended I get this book, and I got this book. And I'll try not to. There's actually a link in the description that talks about some of that stuff you're talking about, Jim. And yes, we will come back to a time when we're allowed to be in each other's presence, at which time I'd be happy to lend you this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fascinating. I haven't finished it yet. I'm working on too many of Vlad 65 and your book recommendations. But anyway, listen, I think this is time. Maybe we should why don't we just jump into the chat, see where everyone's at, catch up with the chat, and then we'll get, and I really mean this, I think we're going to make quick work of the sound of the, and the look. Like you said, gallons of ink. Just so much has been said on it. We're not coming up with anything new. I think the story and the meaning here is where it's at. We're not even, I mean, other than, yes, remarkable performances, but nothing where we're spending hours talking about that either. So we'll make quick work of that stuff, and then we'll get into the real meat of it. What the hell is this trying to tell us? All right. Where are we with our, with our peeps? Anyone new yet? No. All right. Okay. So first of all, it looks like DMG. I hope, Dragon Movie Guy, I hope you don't mind me calling you DMG. I think that just totally works. DMG was wondering if Jim, can you answer his question? Did you just take a shot of bourbon?
No, it's just water in an unnamed, I took the label off so we didn't get in trouble, but it's a 1 liter pop bottle. So nothing too interesting, just to fend off the dry mouth and the space whatever. The space pox. I don't know.
Vlad 65 says Hal ranked number 13th villain in movies by the AFI. Oh
yeah.
I'm gonna say this is the problem with rankings. You know, it's like, Hal is also so much more and so much less than a villain. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, but he's so noteworthy as an obstacle and as a catalyst and all these other things. Like, but Vlad, when we're talking about performances and even meaning, bring this back up if I don't remember, because a lot of the times I just don't, because I'm that kind of whatever. Okay, we've got Vlad 65 says, I'm guessing the intermission was still. Yeah, what do you do?
There?
Still like, in it? No, I suspect still in the theater. My dad took me to this thing when I was a small child, and obviously not when I was 1 year old. Although who knows? Maybe they saw it in the drive-in, my folks at the time, but I remember it being a weird kind of experience. All right.
Yeah.
Richard L. Richard Katie in the house.
Hey guys. Woohoo!
Good to see you guys here. You want to comment on this one? I'll read it to you just in case you're not catching it. DMG says, from 2001 to Eyed Wide Shut, Kubrick knew his balls. LOL. And also DMG makes an interesting point. Weird to think the Tenet is 1 minute longer than 2001.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and you know what? It was interesting. Yeah, like Vlad says, the guy had to cut spacewalking scenes, even though, like you say, Jim, they did time and breath and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, look at this. Andrew Masters, good to see you here. Welcome.
Woohoo!
Folks, for those of you who don't know, Andrew Masters, I would in a way call him the Curtis Judd of recording engineers slash drummers slash sound mixers, music, but music, and he's got this great series, a killer series where he does tours. He's in Nashville, and so there is like every great, awesome range of home studio options that and so he's got a whole series. It's the weirdest kind of in the home gear porn, but really fascinating. And he just did a great interview. I'll put a link, I'll pin it. He did a great interview with Curtis Judd, who's been on the show before, a friend of the show. They did a great interview with each other. It was like I was like, oh, this is music and sound nerd heaven. You know, these two just riffing off each other. It was an awesome thing. Anyway, great to see you here. And wondering how we got into Rogan's studio. Well, I don't know. Like, if we look back here, I'm wondering how HAL 9000 got into just outside of Rogan's studio.
Oh, no. Not that guy.
Walt, I'm going to put a pin on this one, and then when we get into the story aspects, I'm sure that'll come up. So Jim, yeah, let's start getting into it. Why don't we take? Actually, you know what? I'm gonna jump around a little just in case Andrew wants to comment on this. It is this kind of thing. You might know something on the subject that you and I perhaps but let's talk about the sound.
Yeah.
You know, for myself, I come back to what we've talked about. And like you said in your first thoughts, Jim, he was really most sound was diegetic. It was coming from in the scene, and the thing I wrote down in my notes was it was almost like he was using the diegetic sound, strictly effects, never any music, ever diegetically. Like there was no pop songs, no radio, no nothing, except maybe the BBC interview when they were on the ship with that little bit of a jingle. But almost like to put to make sure when music was happening that you took note. Yeah. You know, otherwise it was just, and unlike in my little startup sequence thing where I just didn't have time to make the cuts, otherwise I would have. Yeah, if you're outside, unless you're hearing what the character was hearing, you heard nothing. Like it's full on silence. There's no hum. There's no white noise to make you feel comfortable. Like, this guy was comfortable with you just hearing what you needed to hear. This is what's happening. You know, even in the Dawn of Man and that. And I think it's interesting. We've had a run of these films where they really are like kind of, they're very much a less is more sort of thing. You're hearing, you know, and if there's a sound effect, you're hearing it and it's motivated It makes total sense. You really you're made aware of it. It is kind of awesome, actually.
Yeah.
And then the music choices have their own kind of story, even including, at least the Blue Danube one was almost like an accident. Yeah. What about you? What were your thoughts on the sound, like soundscape and the soundtrack?
Yeah, I thought it was it's super effective for me personally. Just the breathing. I think that there's a couple things going on. So again, just to mention that I watched it with my family asleep upstairs, and often I keep the volume down, but there were so many alarms and so many repetitive noises. Not throughout, but there'd be like a beep, 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 for 90 seconds to 3 minutes, to the point where I just started muting it because I know my wife would, get out of bed going, "What the hell are you watching?" Because if you weren't watching it, you would be sort of like curious, like, what are you watching? But there was so many of those that I just sort of turned the sound down for those, and it was sort of an interesting. It was obviously on purpose, purposeful on Kubrick's part.
Everything was motivated. It wasn't beeping.
But there was a lot of them, a lot of alerts or alarms or scanners or something that was making some sort of like little kind of giving you a little portent, like something's gonna go off the rails here. But at the same time, not any suspense music. A lot of I found the breathing very effective because you're aware of that it's a thing out in space. If your breathing supply is interrupted, and you saw
it was our cue to their emotion and their stress.
Yeah.
Because they were so, like, there was no emoting, right? Like, they never, so it was that cue to saying, okay, he's under stress, his breathing's getting faster, he's, or the lack of breathing in Frank Poole's case.
Those would be the kind of guys that would they would hire, right? Guys who are good under pressure. They don't freak out. There's nobody like, sort of Bill Paxton and Alien saying, "Oh, we're all dead, man," and that kind of thing. It was, or Pullman. I always get Paxton.
Not actual astronauts. Mo, they're all.
But the
Houston,
so that
we have a problem up here.
The breathing was good. The alarms were good. The silence was impressive. That's what space. Yeah, sounds like. There's not a lot of explosions. I was going to say one thing about the breathing. When you saw Dr. Frank rocket by with the little loose cord, you thought, "Oh God, that guy's done." Oh. But
it's superiorly effective, right? Like, I mean, I think you all know what I mean.
Yeah, just so effective. I mean. And even just the way, and this is a look thing, but the cuts, like when you saw him, they showed the just before Frank gets killed, you saw it approach, and then there's no screaming, no yelling. All you saw was Keir Dulley's character, Dave, looking out the window and seeing this human form rocket by at 100 miles an hour or whatever. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
With the cord and his limbs all sort of trailing. But anyway, more to the sound. Yeah, just the use of it, the use of the music. So when you use music like "Thus Spake Zarathustra," when that comes on and bam, during the dawn of man, it's important. It's not this sort of underlying theme. It just kind of comes right out at you. And the guy again obviously knew what he was doing, but really effective, really spare, and I really appreciate that. Kind of, as we talk about sound for half an hour, pretty minimalistic when you think about it, right?
I think that was one of the things, Jim, that again, I've become appreciating that the soundscape, and they're all conscious choices. It's not a knock on sound. It's like literally using silence as a sound, you know? And yeah, there's a couple of periods where it gets really, I'm thinking when all the other crew members are dying and that, you know, where it gets kind of bleepy bloopy. But I trying to pull my thought together here. Yeah, that it's using silence as a sound. Like that's just another piece in the toolkit for the for when they were doing the mix. It'd be now there's something I'd love Mr. Masters to comment on, or perhaps we've got to bring him on as a special guest of the show. But it'd be interesting what Andrew have to say about that idea of using that silence is a piece of a mixer, a music producer, or a film soundtrack, or a sound designer's kit. You know. Anything else? We did get an interesting comment, a couple of interesting comments. Well, he did read the book that he recommended to me. I suspect it's in there. I just haven't reached it. Alex North did the music that Kubrick displaced with classical that was less directly linked as a cue to the action. Oh, yes. And it was even a bit of a scandal. The guy who designed this, did the soundtrack for him, didn't find out until he was at the premiere that all his work had been bumped.
That'd be fun.
You know what? That's just to a certain degree. That my limited time in the film industry. There's a part of me kind of going, yeah, that's that can be their MO. You know, it's like, we didn't tell you. Oh well.
Yeah.
What? Okay. Let's get back to Look, which gets a lot more ink than the sound, other than Thus Spake Zarathustra, who. Vlad 65 feels it's a very, very boring piece, except for that awesome bit that we do here in the film. But as far as the Lick goes, what were your thoughts on the Look itself? What can you tell us unique on this barely talked about? It's going to be easy, Jim. This film's barely talked about ever by anyone. I'm amazed we found this deep in the archives with dust.
It's funny too. I was just thinking today. I was in the Victoria State Museum in Melbourne a couple years ago, and I thought, was there that? And I found it on my phone. Oh, you can see it. There's a chair. You can see the little red mark there. There's one of the chairs that they
outside the Howard Johnson.
Yeah,
outside
right
the Hojos.
So anyway, that's pretty. The things you find on your phone. But anyway, it's funny too because the female. So we'll talk about. I just want to talk about the costuming. I guess.
Yeah.
Is that the men actually look? Their suits and stuff. They look pretty
stylish. Yeah.
They could fit in almost today, whereas some of the women's uniforms looked a little more of that sort of faux futuristic kind of thing. But the whole thing, it sort of reminded me of anytime you saw a bunch of people together, it reminded me of figures in an architectural drawing. You know how those architectural drawings are always so aspirational, specifically I'm thinking of that.
I would say of that era. Especially,
yes, yeah. So you just sort of people walking around with
60s mod
suitcases and things, or briefcases, and specifically that sort of pre-breakfast drink that they were having with the Russian crew there. And I thought, man, this looks like all white with dashes of color, and let's throw some people in this architectural drawing, and there you go.
Chairs that don't actually look that comfortable. Like
no. But so a part of that look was kind of interesting. But yeah, a lot of it could pass for today. I love the set, and I found a picture online.
I want a suit jacket like that with the Velcro attachment.
Yeah,
that worked. It looked good. Like, it had to be pointed out to me, but I was like, damn, that's not, you know, and you see some that, ooh, people will be wearing Velcro for everything. It's like, oh, this works. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no. But the other, just the time and care that was taken. I read a tiny bit about sort of the modeling and that sort of thing, so that it doesn't look slapdash. And it's not, you know, if you watch the original Star Wars A New Hope, depending on the version you get and whatever technology you're watching it on, sometimes the blue screen effects or the green screen effects or whatever, you can sort of tell it's been, you know, affixed to that. You can see there's different layers, but here it looked great and meticulous, and like, you know, everything, the look of the ships and the technology was kind of amazing. Even the work of the cinematographers. So the Dawn of Man, which could have been any kind of mishmash, looked great. I mean, there was some really great shots even at the start of just dawn, you know, but yeah, it was
which
really
were still photographs front projected onto a set they built in London, England.
Yeah.
And one of the little tidbits, apparently they finally sent somebody to Spain and then to Africa, and it was still photographs. And Kubrick, who, although he had a pilot's license, apparently didn't want to fly, or whatever his deal was at the time. So he put a grid on everything and then was talking to them on the phone saying, yeah, the thing, you know, you have the peak at B3. I want it at C14.
Jeez.
Do that. Take that picture like that. It's like, okay, boss. Maniac we work for.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to go back. We got to get that sunrise again. We got to get it this way. Where, of course, now they just shoot everything in 8K and go, I don't know, figure it out at your end.
Yeah.
You know.
No, but, you know, it's such a great looking movie, and in so many ways, the centrifugal, whatever, the circle that they live in, that they're, you know, that Dave is jogging along, that sort of bends. There's a great picture on the Wikipedia entry from the outside of it, of them filming it. And it just, you know, that's like all this stuff at the time, I think would have been mind blowing. We're used to it after having seen it a couple times, perhaps, and after seeing other, you know, decent science fiction since then. But most of the science fiction in the 60s, I would hazard to guess, is a lot like, you know, Village of the Damned and that kind of, you know, almost kind of schlocky horror chiller kind of stuff. Not all of it, but a lot of it was sort of monsters and maidens.
If it was
this one was
sci-fi, it was at home sci-fi.
Yeah.
You know,
and,
on
you know,
Earth,
maybe
and
I'm not sure when. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of movies, but they probably came after. So this was 68, but I think this would have been jaw-dropping at the time, especially the, you know, it would have. I think it would have been a genuine game changer. Obviously, not alone in saying that, but I think it would be that it was a game. Even after seeing it, I guess I should say, I'm impressed about what a game changer it probably would have been at the time.
Yeah,
including the look, the different colored, spacesuits. That was a great idea. So you could, a simple sort of a color legend. So
solid color. Yep.
Yeah. And you could tell the characters from one another at a look. The lights, the lighting. And it's funny too, if you ever take a look at a kind of a spoof of it, you can tell what they're spoofing immediately because of the look. So I found a clip of South Park online, and it's Eric Cartman as HAL 9000. He's like, Cal, Kyle, what you do, Kyle? You know, in that, but he's trying to tamp it down a bit to be more like Hal. And of course, Kyle says something which angers him, and he turns into the old Cartman. That's sort of their gag, is that he gets out of character. Oh, you stupid, you know, or whatever. But from the look of it, you could tell that South Park, within a nanosecond, was making fun of 2001. As distinct, I think, as the look of Star Wars was to that. Like the production design was outstanding, and it just even some of the details. I wrote down here the caution explosive bolts. I think that was the Wes Anderson font. You know, the big big.
And the way he, like the whole Jim, as he's looking at that ridiculously long set of instructions for the toilet.
10 steps.
Geez. Okay, I got to focus here. Like there was subtle humor in the, what did you refer to it earlier, in the mundanity of it all.
Well,
what about
we'll talk about that a little bit in the story, because there's several points that I want to bring up there, but it's the same kind of thing that Stephen King does, but we'll get to it in a bit.
But what, when we think about this look, when we think about where it fits in his whole oeuvre, again, bright. Okay, we can get into an argument about what low key versus high key lighting is, but bright and even lighting. This is not a guy who was like, when it's scary, I will make it dark. It's like, no, it's motivated dark, or it's motivated bright. And you can have a scary time. And we saw that probably most effectively used in The Shining. Like after a while, you're just terrified wherever you are in that hotel. You do not like that ability to use no change in lighting and have scary things happen. All of a sudden you're like, you can't just look for these other cues to know, I can calm down. This is a rest period. He doesn't do that. And, you know, I'm not saying that we didn't see this in, well, I think the lighting was a little more classic. Hey, we're playing with dark, you know, bright and shadow, light and shadow in Doctor Strangelove, or maybe even Paths of Glory. I wouldn't put Spartacus in the same thing. Partly it was the first big movie he did, and it was in Technicolor, where it was like everything must be bright. Our colors must be super saturated. Everyone must know this is Technicolor, you know. Before we've got some interesting chat comments, and probably time to catch up with that. But I wanted a couple of things you said, Jim. The costuming, again, just so bang on. All their technical details. They really did do so much work with big companies that were working with NASA on this stuff. You know, IBM. It was a futurist's dream to be able to have input on this movie, and how seriously they took it. I guess the guy who was running NASA at the time, George Mueller, visited the studio during production in like 67, maybe 66, because it's Kubrick, it takes forever. He said it was like NASA East, like just how seriously they took it, every little detail, which I thought was cool. Even to the costumes, and you're right, Jim, like the stewardesses, the flight attendant, as we'd say now, but at the time, the stewardesses' costumes, I still think it's ahead. One, the ridiculous thing, apparently that was motivated by, because they're bouncing around, they're the ones moving around all the time, they don't have a seatbelt on, they can bang their noggin, and so it's padded.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's part of it. The other thing was, which kind of, like, I mean, you look, not that it was really lascivious in 60s flying, but it still was like kind of, wow, that's almost androgynous. Like there's no cheap, you know, there's no cheap Yeah, at any time, you're not feeling like, we will now look at the woman.
Go-go boots or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is, when did Barbarella come out? I mean, right around the same time, or maybe a little later, where that's like the reverse, so anyway, let's but before we get into the chat, you know what? I'm going to shamelessly take this off for a quick sec. And folks, I think it's time to quickly beg you all for a like. We'll get into the rest of the shameless begging, but if you could smash the like button if you like what it is, it does help it helps with the algorithm, or that's what I've been told. That's what other YouTubers say. I don't believe they'd lie to us. All right. Okay, back to the look, and even we'll dip back into the sound. I know some folks had commented about that, but we'll work backwards. Vlad65, Dan, little doubt that Stanley was creative OCD. He insisted on many takes. Yeah, perfect design. It had to look good for him. Here's a question for everyone in the chat, and you, Jim. I'm interested in what you think on this item. It seemed that was he looking for what he was looking for, or was he going, I want enough choices that I know when I'm editing, something will be in there. Like, I know for my style of directing, the odd shorts I have, as soon as I know I got it, like there's a zing, got it. Okay, let's move on. I've been fortunate enough to be on enough sets, not a million, but a few, where you see the director, and that's kind of we like that, but we'll do a couple for safety. This guy, it's almost like, no, I want to make sure I have all the paint I could possibly require. What do you think on that?
I think it's,
yes, everyone in the chat, are you buying what I just said?
I think it's personal preference. I don't think actors, for instance, who are your big tools as a director, I don't think they love that kind of thing. On the other hand, somebody like Clint Eastwood, not really comparing Clint Eastwood's directorial efforts to Kubrick's, but Clint Eastwood is famous for doing like one take. Yeah, we got it right. Time for lunch. Let's go. And
it's not like he's a schmuck when he's behind the camera.
Yeah. So I think it's probably a little bit of that. It's a little bit, I don't know if he'd waffle though. Stanley Kubrick doesn't strike me as I like that last one. Maybe we'll go for the one 7 takes ago. Like, I think he just tries to get as much. Maybe he's actually looking, and I know this is a technique, is looking to drain, drain a performance, say, of anything the actor may be adding that he feels isn't necessary. You know what I mean? You say something so many times, it doesn't really retain its meaning after a while. And this one, for instance, has been mentioned before. A lot of the dialogue is very, very banal. Like there's just and they're in this fantastic setting, and they're like, do you want a ham sandwich or do you prefer chicken?
I think we'll get into the performance aspect of it. But I was more like just in the choices, in the in the constant try, do this. Yeah, there's a part of me thinking maybe it was a little bit of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving to here, we're moving back. DMG, a little smart remark. Who says toilet humor has to be lowbrow? 10 steps. The Upside Down comments, I thought the film had such great visuals. It looks better than some things we get today. You know what? And this is one of the things I wrote down even before. I'm like, yeah, one thing you'll know with this guy, no camera moves for camera moves' sake.
Yeah.
If he could get it in a lock off, he did. Now, part of it was you get into the technical details of the way they shot a lot of this. There just wasn't the time and budget to move the camera to. So everything was built. It's like, okay, we're going to design the scene, our mise en scene, so we don't have to move this camera. because we're blowing it all on that set where we're actually going to turn the camera upside down multiple times, you know? Where are we here? Vlad65, you can find those 10 steps online. It's out there.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Sure.
I did. I didn't grab it. Well, I was too busy thinking about my magnum opus. DMG says, weird to think 2001 is 3 years after Sound of Music and 9 years before Star Wars. Such good cinematography. You know, it really was part of this time in American film where I would say End of Music almost ended this is how we make great big movies. And all of a sudden you had all this experimentation, all this amazing American film that was like responding to these other movements and saying, yeah, we can do that at an order of magnitude, like levels higher, you know, like this is not next level. This is 10 levels. You know? Vlad,
I think
60 feet. Oh, yeah.
DMG mentioned, I think he's got a little Sound of Music obsession. I think he mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago as well.
Well, I think we, in a way, because we're kind of in that time frame, right?
Yeah.
You know,
or somebody did.
Oh, and Christopher Palmer, who is still on your wall, did pass. Yeah. Vlad 65 says, hey guys, don't you think the real FX, like in camera, is kind of more grounded and realistic seeming compared to CGI? You know what? I'm going to push back only a little bit. I kind of get why filmmakers like to do that, because then they know they got it. It's great for performance because the performers are acting in the space. So they're reacting. They can put themselves in that space. That said, there's a ton of CGI that happens that you don't notice. It's that real. You know, their ability to, so I think it's one of those things, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, and the tool, you know, the tool should kind of state itself. But what do you think, Jim, on that?
Yeah, you know, in between CGI and I don't know. I prefer fewer effects in the first place. I know that there has to be a role for them, but yeah, the more I see, the more it sort of, like I read the book Ready Player One. Just, it was a summer read, and I haven't seen the movie yet, and it just looks kind of loud and messy to me. So
yeah, I would agree with you. Well, but there, I think though, let's say, you know what? Let's not talk about a different story.
Yeah.
That said, there is where you're going to do CGI. Why would you do it like it's real?
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point. Well, exactly, is they are in a fake world, you know?
It wouldn't get made.
We've got, well, first of all, Jelly Duck. Great to see you here, man. And I'm going to jump ahead just a bit here. Shashank. I love everybody answering to Shashank, and including you, Jim. Great to see you on that. Thank you very much, sir. This is why we work well together. But I love that these guys can come in like a bar, a clubhouse. Yeah. Everyone knows who they are. That's awesome. All right. One of the, you know what? I'm going to pin that. Now, here, DMG, Dragon Movie Guy, says, and yeah, this is a classic filmmaking guidance. Shoot for coverage first, then push in for close-ups, releasing extras as you go. Yeah, it's like classic. All right, we got a budget here, you know. Master, long, two, over shoulder. Strike. Okay, do we have to turn anything around? Great, move on. Let's go. Vlad 65 talking about Kubrick, notorious for many takes, to have many choices. He did, going back, and I was going to bring this up. Yeah, the Jim, back to what you were saying about draining emotion. Vlad65 here notes he did drain Shelley Duvall in Shining. I was cruel doing it. Yeah, she was like, right.
A mess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not
and
gonna
she looked
lie,
at
some visual effects are pretty interesting in 1968.
yeah.
Remarkable. DMG, I will just put that on the screen. I'm not going to say it because it's going to sound bad. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Jelly Duck says no camera shakes. All right. A lot of saying hello back and forth. The Upside Down did like. Whoops. Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. The Upside Down did. Here's a vote for Ready Player One.
Maybe I should watch it. I mean, I read the book, so that came out first too. So
yeah. Dragon Movie Guy says, boo on shooting digital and computer graphics. My fantasy football team name is literally CGI Rules Movies. Yeah, but how would I do this in real?
Yeah.
in camera. That's
and
happening.
having said,
and this is quality production values, folks. Top tier.
Try
I
watching
do this for you people. Oh, sorry.
Try
Jim?
watching the made for TV Spider-Man movie from the 70s. Having said that against anti-CGI, and see how much you like that. It just without the computer effects, it quickly becomes a bit of a nightmare. So,
yeah. Shashank says, I love this movie dearly. And like Jelly Duck said, the effects hold up really well for the time it was set in. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's something that we maybe could talk about. We should almost do like which predictions worked out? But I think I can point to at least a couple things in the looks where it's like, that's not that far off. They were watching themselves, or they were watching an interview, and they both have monitors on their dining room table or whatever, as they're both kind of eating and watching this BBC interview that was taken of them. And it was like, that could be a flat screen tablet on any desk. Like, I mean, there's some parts where it was eerily accurate, other parts where it's like, I don't see a touch screen anywhere.
Yeah.
Buttons.
Yeah.
Oh, vintage, but anyway, Richard L says, the 60s generation of LSD takers must have really tripped out on this flick. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that part? It was kind of a weird part of their pitch because they couldn't, like, genre-wise, I called this epic sci-fi. It is science fiction. It's not science fantasy. There's no adventure. It's an epic. It even references in some ways the Odyssey. There's big themes. Yeah, I mean, how do you pitch there's going to be hardly any dialogue, and the bad guy you're going to feel bad for.
Yeah.
In a weird
way. Just a
way.
big red eye, yeah.
Where do you go with it, the Cyclops of this picture was,
Sauron's nicer cousin.
Oh, little side adventure these folks are on. Good for them. Yeah, these guys are chatting back and forth. Vlad. Yes, here we go. So it's two research irregulars chatting on this. Vlad65 says, Walt says, LSD, yes, poster campaign about the ultimate trip. It's like the squares are getting hip to the jive. Okay. Shashank says, this movie and Close Encounters of the Third Kind actually sparked an interest in aliens for me. I love to read up on any news on aliens, especially after these two movies. Really, Shashank? That's an interesting note. Thanks for sharing that with us, man. Wonder if anyone feels the same way. When you first saw this movie, did it trigger some interest in something that it discussed? I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat or in the comments later. Okay. And DMG will take 2001's in-camera effects over the CGI on Rise of Skywalker. Well, I think, okay, model work and lighting shot on film beats the PlayStation 4 cutscenes of Episode 9. LOL. I don't think, I love DMG when he makes these solid statements. It's like, I don't care what you guys think. I'm telling you, this is where I am. It's like he's staking, he's putting that flag in the ground. Shashank says, one of the most influential movies ever. I remember Spielberg saying in an interview that this film was his drug. Makes sense to me. Jelly Duck, though, refers to The Abyss in the 80s. When was that? 1980, 81, 82,
80s,
somewhere in there. They had the 3D digital water effect, which was new and unique and looked so good. You know?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, folks. I think we're going to we're gonna move forward in our agenda now. We're getting into some of the meatier parts of it. We did the sound. First of all, let's talk about the performances, Jim. Yeah, what do you got to say on that? I think there are some remarkable performances in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering where you're coming from on it.
First of all, just tying a couple of comments back, Barbarella was also 68, so same year, which is freaky. Imagine that as a double bill at the drive-in. You know, what do you start with and what do you end with? But
Yeah.
and then The Abyss was 89 actually, so it was a little bit later in the movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was James Cameron, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. The performances, yeah, you know, it's funny because the human beings and the dialogue and all that kind of thing, they're almost like an afterthought in this. And that's not to disparage them. It's just that these are the people that happen to be along for the ride. And like we said before, they're almost all corporate. Well, except for Frank and Dave, who are the two astronauts in the end. The lead up to that, they don't even, the Haywood Floyd, I can't remember what his exit was out of the film, which is the guy that you follow up to the moon and who has the conversation with the Russian team.
The last time you see him, he's on that recorded video.
Yes, that's right too.
Hal's getting lobotomized.
So he's sort of the communications guy, I guess, or the point person on for this whole project. So aside from the two astronauts, all the people before they're either pilots, stewardesses, other crew members, Haywood Floyd,
bureaucrats.
So they're of that class, and they're talking about sandwiches and they're talking about other things, but having said that, they're given things to do, and I think they carry them like they're supposed to be. They're not supposed to be recoiling in horror, and I think Keir Dullea is pretty subtle, because what he does is he starts moving his head a lot, and he's trying to figure out what to do, and it's at no point is it frantic, but you can tell that there's a heightened level of attention within him.
There's something going on.
He does a great. They're very clear-eyed portrayals of like astronauts and bureaucrats and that sort of thing. There's not a lot of. I don't think there's a lot of there's secrets in this, but there's still there doesn't seem to be a lot of subtext. Aside from keeping the main lie or the main cover-up that they found this thing on the moon. So, they do what they were intended to do, but they look sharp. Like Keir Dullea, you can't take his eyes off him, especially at the end. So,
I want to go back further, Jim. Like, one of the things I was kind of amazed at in this film, and you don't quite. It's almost like, because it's so long and because it covers, let's say, so much space and time, literally. Or figuratively, in the film space and time.
Mm-hmm.
The very first performances we're seeing, which was actually they hired a mime who recruited his troupe and a bunch of others. Like, so you got, and that's why actually, like in the description, folks, I always put the top billed cast and supporting cast if I can tease out who the key players are before I've watched the film. Here, I kind of knew it's Keir Dullea, Gary Lockwood. Those guys are, that's Dave Bowman, Frank Poole. William Sylvester plays Dr. Floyd. And Daniel Richter is Moonwatcher. He was both the lead, he was the guy who gets the stick. He's the first one to touch the monolith of the hominids, the early Australopithecine hominids deep in South Africa, around their one little, barely a puddle of water. And those dumb tapers who didn't know what was coming for them. But from what I understood, they sent them to the zoo, and they said, just here, you better look at. And I'll be goddamned, even now that I know it's men in suits, it still works for me. Like, it's visceral and clear and honest, and just the brass tacks. No, no subtlety, nor should there be. It's not. No. The subtlety is in what everything is being communicated at us. Like, they're really, and I think, and then if we advance, and there does seem to be, Jim, like the stick goes up in the air, and in one of the most amazing match cuts ever, as everyone talks about, as the stick, the bone, the thumping bone, as it comes down, it match cuts into a spaceship, which actually are, and as they kind of bounce through them, you see different countries' flags. They're all missile launchers, all pointed at Earth, and it's like, okay, we've become civilized, but we're still doing the same shit. And I think that, so when we see Floyd have that subtle kind of back and forth with the Russians, I thought that was like that's part of the, hey, we're still doing this, it's all the same, that these guys kind of hide it behind that sort of that so corporate kind of, I don't know what you're talking about.
Join us for a drink, boy, won't you?
Yeah. What a fortuitous turn of events. I did look up today what they were saying, because it wasn't in subtitles. They just speaks Russian. And they were like, let's wait for him here. Let's see if we can't get something out of him. Where do you think he went? Like all that. And the cover story and the whole, and even the corporate, I've been in those meetings for a while. It's like, boy, I'm back at the city of Winnipeg, where some senior guy who's got the ear of the politicians coming, okay, so we all have to, and I appreciate that you're all just going to keep your fucking mouth shut. Like you can even tell the way the body language everyone's using. It's actually a well-directed scene that's communicating a lot without anyone thumping their fists or getting... Like, and I think that's what was great about these performances and about Kubrick's direction here. It's like, I don't need to, that's not the way the real world works. It's not about one guy going, I want justice, or, honestly, it's like, no, it's real people going through this massive thing that they don't even know what they're dealing with.
Well, to that point, that little sort of pre-breakfast talk that he has with the Russians, when he says, I'm not at liberty to talk about that. That feels like not an act of violence, but it feels
it's
like
a fuck off.
In amongst the nice, in amongst the niceties, it's like a talk to the hand, and it feels almost like
DMG. You're also a sports guy. The that baseball analogy. It's a bunt? Guys crowding the plate. No, when the pitcher throws that pit.
Pushback. No, it's not pushback, but it's a blowback or something like that. You're trying to get him to lean back. Yeah.
Back off the plate.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good analogy too. But and you're right about sort of overlook. It's important not to overlook the apes in the or the chimpanzees or whatever they are at the start. I mean, it is
Early hominids.
It is about 15 minutes long. Brushback. DMG is saying brushback. Yeah, that's right. It is. Yeah, it's a great, and it's a sizable chunk of the movie too. I mean, it's 12 to 15 minutes, I guess, after the music ends and the titles come up. Yeah. Yeah, they did a great job. And there's that one tight
ever.
There's that one tight close up of the frightened ape or frightened early hominid, and his eyes are all wide, and it's genuinely kind of
visceral.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that is about as visceral as an actor on the movie gets. There's a couple things that Dave Bowman does, Keir Dulley's character later on, but nowhere near that kind of that emotion. You don't see that
brass
strength of emotion. Yeah,
that brass tacks. That I think I do. Like, even though it doesn't get the conversation, I think maybe it's one of those few areas of this film that maybe gets short shrift. It gets a little bit of, hey, did you know that? But then otherwise not really kind of, how is this leading into one of the themes of the film? What's actually going on here? The
start, you mean, is getting the short shrift?
And even later on, but definitely the start. The start, the Donna Man, I don't think gets the credit it deserves, other than a novelty. Hey, they were mimes. They were a dance troupe. It's like, but that's not the same thing as, what we're looking at and how it fits and sets up later stuff.
Yeah. I'm generally an impatient guy, but I have a lot of time for that. And the question I have is, could you watch that if it was a full movie? Like, if they crafted a story, albeit subtle, about the survival of one family of early hominids. And I while I was watching this, I thought, I could probably watch.
Sorry.
I could probably. Well, it's okay. I could watch just probably a movie on that, shot by Kubrick, of course. I mean, it would probably be something else. He's got space virus.
Yeah, I'm the only one here in the pod, so
that's cool.
And if I was going to give Hal something, screw that. He's the one who's locked me out of the house.
The other thing too, this isn't so much a performance thing, but I it's one of those things that you've seen a bunch of times, and then you see it again, and you're a little bit older, and you're like, what the hell? And they have a cheetah leaping on a performer. Like, they literally have a cheetah attack.
Yes.
Holy, and only now am I thinking to myself,
play fighting, they called it.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Like, you're just like, cheetah attacks an ape, whatever. But I see it,
and now. It's a guy, it's somebody in a costume,
and it's a cheetah.
Sure, just get a jump on me,
jumping from a height with claws, or maybe he was declawed, I don't know. But that alone, I just went, you do a spit take when you see that, and I see it.
Hey, Jim.
I guess I did it at this time.
Yeah. Was there any other thing before we kind of get to the story? Is there something we're missing about performances here? I think, like, it's funny. They're so spare. Oh, I did actually. I've got a comment on something you said. I like what you said about, could you watch a story? And here's the thing about it's so episodic. It's kind of hard to, but I think that's part of what makes that spare performance work, is here is this episode. And then it's very clear, very distinct. Now we're in a different episode with different characters.
Yeah.
Floyd is the only one who kind of connects three of them together. Floyd and a couple of bureaucrats are in two, but otherwise it's this kind of, like here's a piece. But I agree with you about the hominids. I could see that as becoming Yeah, I could see you
Spin-off.
you could have gotten a spin-off. The prequel.
Disney Plus, the
It's
early
really
hominids.
you just extend it, and it's like a prequel. The prequel to 2010. Minus
Yeah.
0001 CE. BCE.
A couple other real quick things that I thought one of the, was it Haywood Floyd? It's his daughter's birthday. Birthdays come up a couple times in this, which is interesting. But I looked it up. I don't think she's credited, but the little girl, I thought, she's very cute. Is Vivian Kubrick?
I'm sorry. It's his daughter.
Yeah. But it's Kubrick's daughter, who apparently is a big MAGA and Proud Boys nut right now. So
is she?
But, it's what it says, and it's according to Wikipedia. So just hold that. But anyway, back then she was cute, and I thought it was kind of a cute little,
adorable little girl. Yeah.
And it's funny how sort of disaffected the rest of the the communications with Earth were, like when they call up Frank, wish him happy birthday, he's just sort of not really interested, and the other people are just sort of going on and on and on, and it's a scene where they're they're thoughtful enough to call him on his birthday, but they're not really connecting. But whereas Haywood Floyd seemed to be talking to his daughter.
Yeah. Well, and I think that sort of goes into and some of these performances. I think it's relevant, although it's also part of the meaning and everything. We'll maybe get in a little more detail. But how well they did, I got to make a call, which is also a great bureaucrat way. I got to make a call. Sure, I'll sit down with you guys. Oh, now you're bugging me. I got to go for breakfast, and really just to get my head in the game before I get into the performance of it all. Hey, Jim, are you still with us? You're frozen a little. Jim has frozen a bit. Hopefully he will reconnect with us. I'm sure he will. But briefly back to performance. I thought everyone, even as they're showing off the technology of the time, which was kind of, hey, we think the future will look like this. The voice printing stuff, it's like, boy, we're close to that already. Yeah, we have, folks, we have lost Jim. I'm sure it's just briefly for now. He'll have to log in and log back on. I'm wondering if anyone's seeing any problem with I'm going to take a quick look here. Well, it looks like we're still coming in through okay on the chat or on YouTube, but if there's anything really going sideways, let me know. I will keep a little closer eye on the chat. But you know what I will do is let us go to the chat and talk about, see what you guys thought about these performances. DMG chimes in with the short shrift was Kubrick's nickname for Tom Cruise on Eyes. I suspect that's more DMG comedy gold. I have to get that sound thing and deliver that for you, DMG. All right. What else do we got here? Okay. Just like Terminator 3, talk to the hand. All right. What does... Oh. Jim is Gary Lockwood. Oh, that's good. All right, Jim is frozen. Yeah, he's frozen. And here, let me take a quick. I'll do. Let me send him. I should send him a quick email. Let's see if he's trying to get back in. I mean, my signal seems to be okay. Okay. All right, let's find out. The nature of live video on the internet. What's hilarious, let me take off this. Folks, I I had checked out a friend's video. He was doing a sound check kind of thing for a live show he did today, but he was doing this thing last night. And I basically, all of the problems they had, I just blamed on their service. It's called StreamYard. And I said and I was saying, well, not that Restream's all that great, the service I use, but it's so much better than that. And now I'm having these same problems. Even my chroma key looks to be fading out for whatever ridiculous reason. All right. Anyway, I think what I will do, folks. Oh. You know what? Maybe it is time, and we're going to start with this question. We're going to get into, before Jim comes back, we're going to start with the story, all right? So let me just, why don't we take a look at the story? Oh, no. Boy, I really jumped ahead there. The story. All right. Shashank asks a great question here. Rob and Jim, don't know whether this was brought up in the discussion, but do you think the film could have used more exposition? My gut tells me then it wouldn't be this movie. If it had exposition, we wouldn't be, to quote Kubrick, we would not be watching the movie with our eyes, which I thought is a great quote. He really was saying, he's like, no, I want this to act on you visually. And there's going to be some things that you're not going to understand because there isn't. Although apparently some of the drafts of the screenplay did have voiceover explaining certain key points in changes of time and setting, time and location. Oh, excuse me. Again, terrible belch. But this seemed to be... Oh, Jim just commented the internet at his house just went down, and so they're restarting their modem. And we've all been through that kind of thing. And that could very well be why I'm worried about my signal. I think Jim and I are both on Shaw Cable. Anyway, back to your question, Shashank. Yeah, I think if there was more exposition, if they made it clear for us, we'd be looking at, which is actually a pretty solid film if you just judged it on its own, which was 2010. A sort of sequel shot in the 90s, I think, late 80s. Roy Schneider played George Floyd later on, who goes back several years later to find out what happened. And a lot of why hell went crazy is explained. And, it's a lot more of a human drama, a human scale drama, a bit of an adventure, that kind of thing. But yeah, I got to admit, if there was more exposition in this film, I don't know if it would have worked. It was criticized a lot at the time, but there was so much amazing going for it. It kind of overcame that criticism. It's why we think of it as a masterpiece now, whereas if there's a lot of exposition, then it's like you're not left with those great visual moments, those great auditory moments, because there's too many people explaining things to you. I think. What do you think? What do you guys think? Oh, looks like Ahmed's got a jet. Jelly Duck, thank you so much for popping in. Really appreciate that. And have a great rest of your day. Everybody say goodbye to our man in Kuwait City, Jelly Duck 100. Ahmed, great to see you. Catch him on. He streams on Twitch regularly. Check him out. Vlad65 says, on Shashank's question, lack of exposition makes it frustrating on the first watch, but it makes it much deeper experience in later viewings because you get it. And those air quotes I'm putting are what Vlad is saying here. Ahmed Shashank says, Rob, I've mentioned this many times before, but I love the music choices you use for your videos. Feels like that I'm at some relaxing lounge. Well, I'm really glad. I'm glad I'm getting better at that. That's my idea, just to give you like a nice bed to watch, Here, let me just quickly chime back to Um, exposition on this again, the same thing. Famous rock Hudson at premiere. Quote, can somebody tell me what the hell this is about? Close quote, as he walked out. You know what? And there is a guy who I think came from that era, folks, that we talked about, that kind of, here, this is what television is. This is what movies are. I work in Westerns, or no, I'm doing a gangster movie at Paramount or. And already the scene had already started changing so much. Like we really were getting into the era where studios are saying, screw it, we'll finance movies, we'll rent out our lots. But yeah, we're putting this on the filmmakers. We're not the cradle to grave. We're not signing contract players anymore. We're not, so the Upside Down does agree with my comment about exposition. DMG, good on you. Oh, look at this. Shashank says, I love this movie dearly, but I feel for all the lofty ideas this movie had, having exposition would have made it a bit more accessible to the general public. This is a 1 of 2, so we'll wait for the next comment to come up before we get on that. Now, I'm going to move back a little. I'm kind of jumping around, and if I missed your comment, feel free to, if it seems like I'm never going to get to it, feel free to say repost because Rob didn't read it. Okay, DMG says, imagine J.J. Abrams rebooting 2001. CGI, the early hominids, lens flares on the Discovery 1, everywhere, even if it didn't make sense. Although here, they did use lens flares where it was appropriate, like where you'd be behind a visor. Then we saw lens flares, which I thought was really cool. Not the big anamorphic stretch ones. And yet not just because they shined a flashlight in your face. Vlad65 says, exposition. The execs wanted it, but it would not be the timeless movie it is. Yeah, I do agree with you. Sorry guys, keep jumping back. Yeah, seems to be a system problem, not a house problem for Jim. So what I'm going to suggest, I think this is what we're going to do with Jim. We're going to see if he can't, he can use his phone, and he may have to kind of do a selfie thing. Oh, wait, now it might be back. All right, where were we here? We were catching up on some great comments here. Oh, look at this, and a big solid signal from Mr. Jim Chaboyko. Hey, Mr. Chaboyko.
Hi, sorry
Great
about that,
to see
folks.
you. Welcome back. All good, all good. We have, just so you know, we've jumped ahead to story. We've been just working through some of the questions.
Sure.
But I'm going to move back to some of the performance comments. Vlad65, performances. Yes, Hell is always credited as the most interesting character. He's certainly the one a lot of people remember, eh?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like
It's just the, and I wonder if that's because of the unique nature. Like he's a villain. He's their obstacle. So whether or not he's a true antagonist or a motivated character or whatever, he's having a breakdown basically. Yeah. It was, I wonder at the time, and I haven't seen every movie from the 50s and 60s and 40s, and how unique that character would have been. Like the calm,
even
rational.
Now, now, I thought the character was like, it's what I meant. Like when I say, when they're talking about 13th villain, it's like, he's not, you can't compare him to like a Darth Vader. Like there's kind of and it doesn't, acknowledge how unique Hal is in being an antagonist, in being an obstacle and an object of pity as well. Like, you know, the way they're able to give some sort of human feeling to this machine, you know? Yeah, I that's and maybe that's it. Okay, coming back to Walt's comment here, is that what we're getting at in a way? Is it's like he's not a villain, which is why he's interesting. We're actually trying to get in Hal's head. There's this thing going on there where we pity him, even though he is the guy keeping, you know, trying to kill him, but it's not this, oh, when he dies, you don't feel, when he's lobotomized, no one, you don't come out of that, nor are you supposed to, I think, come out of that feeling that visceral catharsis of when the bad guy gets it, when the villain gets his. We're not feeling that, I think. There's no
ice to see you, Hal, or you know, no, it doesn't take some water.
I said I'd be back.
Take a big mop bucket and drop it right down his mainframe or whatever. There's and you know, speaking to performance, I wonder how much of that you can credit. I would suggest a lot to Douglas Rain at the time, and keeping in mind, by that time he had been through most of the works of Shakespeare. He played Iago in Othello. He had played, you know, just about every big role you could name, and being a co-founder of which is for those who don't know, who aren't in Canada, Stratford is a big Shakespearean festival, and other plays too, but it's a big theater town, especially in the summer. You know, and he would have played the gamut there, and he would have been well into his career at this point. I think he would probably be about 40 years old, but you know, he was in it right from the age of 8. So and the thing that most impresses me, elocution, all the elocution lessons and the competitions and the training that he would have taken would have ironed out a lot of the hoserness out of his Winnipeg accent, but at the same time, this is a Winnipeg voice, a little boy who grew up on the prairies, and this is his, you know, at no time does he say, "Holy jeez, I think we're in trouble," but you know, you can still, you know, this is a voice, like he learned he learned the English language about 5 kilometers that way, and about a 10-minute car ride. So I love that Winnipeg connection. It's always fascinated me.
It's an awesome one. Here, I was working through the chat. Oh, yeah.
Sure. I was just going to mention to Richard and Shashank and any of our regulars that showed up a little bit later into the show. Just before you came on, I had done a little bit of a deep research dive with the help of certain databases, University of Manitoba, and I had found some old clippings that talked about young Douglas James Rain won the elocution contest at St. Mary's Academy and that kind of thing. So that's in the first half hour of the show. But anyhow.
You know what? That's a great moment. I'm going to take a quick moment then, Jim. I'm glad you brought that up. Folks, especially if you're not subscribed, you may not have noticed. We've actually, I think I've finally cracked the code on how to kind of get a short version going. And we, first of all, I will, once everything's uploaded tonight, damn it, I forgot to set the resolution again. It's going to take forever, but, that's frustrating. Restream, you need to fix that. Okay. I do now do chapter headings, and I'll make a note of a special chapter heading But Jim and I are now doing, like I kind of boiled down our 2-hour plus conversation into what I call the short version. And it's just kind of some upfront highlights, some basic details about the film. And that will, Jim's talk about the actor who played HAL 9000, an actual, like a former Winnipegger, born and bred, will be in that short version. So. There we go. All right, let's get into story, Jim.
Sure.
We have talked a bit about it, and one of the things that came up, and there have been some comments already, and we'll jump back to comments after we're kind of finished here. And one of the things that Shashank asked me. And I'll repeat the question to you was, do you think more exposition in this film would have just helped make it a little more accessible, make it a little better? And my answer, just so you're aware, was like, I think even though I see why people would want that, I do think that it wouldn't be the same movie. It would be do you know what I mean, Jim? Yeah, it wouldn't be the movie, the experience, if there was more things explaining. And what's his name? Kubrick was quoted saying, he wanted people to see this with their eyes, and I think that's what worked. But yeah, Shashank then commented later, and we'll get back into comments, probably starting with that one. He did have a response to it, but why don't you, before we get into that, why don't you tell me what you thought of the, more or less exposition?
Well, yeah, I mean, exposition is such a tricky thing, isn't it? Like, it's really hard to do gracefully and elegantly, and you can tell, on television that there's often reams of it. That's sort of, especially the big 3 networks or big 4 networks or whatever. The 22 shows a season, they're really cop shows and things like that, can be pretty bad at it. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the way that it was presented. It's tricky, and I think it's supposed to be tricky. Like, it's a little bit of an elevated watch, and I don't think that's bad necessarily. A lot of, you sort of have to come up with your own conclusions, and it can be, I mean, there's dangers there, right? It can be alienating, thinking about a 13-year-old me watching it on my black and white television in my room. I probably would have been a little bit gobsmacked, and the ending is I mean, we're not seeing the ending for the first time. That's one thing I'll give this. But for people who are seeing it for the first time, it would be interesting to see their reaction, because there's lots of theories. There's a lot in there. It doesn't explain a lot. Star Baby, apparently there were supposed to be other versions of this, and it might even be that this is the prequel to a bigger story. This is just the start of something that comes out of the.
Well, Arthur C. Clarke got 2 more books out of it.
Yeah,
and there was another movie. What?
And it's funny, the other movie though, which interestingly, I won tickets to off a radio station and saw the premiere in Winnipeg. Bob Balaban.
Call in the next 5 minutes, and if you can answer this question,
exactly.
You and a friend can go to the premiere screening of.
2010 is based on 2000 what? The Bob Balaban playing an East Indian
Odyssey
doctor.
was it?
Yeah, exactly. John Lithgow, Helen Mirren playing a Russian.
In one of the worst bit of whitewashing ever. Balaban as Dr. Chandra, insert very long Indian name, and he's just so white.
Yeah. And like Upper East Side kind of, did we get corned beef up here? That kind of, but
close.
Yeah, exactly. and different. You know, I can remember it being emotional and people's lives are
It's
threatened.
funny, actually, while you're gone, we did talk about that. Yeah, it was a
did you? Okay.
human adventure kind of drama.
Yeah.
Like a pretty good movie on its own. It's just, it's unfairly compared. Or not, unfairly and fairly. Like, I mean...
Totally different. Totally different kettle of fish, though.
Yeah. But no one's calling it a classic. But plenty of great exposition. Here, Jim, let's quickly... Shashank did... And I know we're kind of bouncing between comments right now. We'll wrangle ourselves soon enough. But you know what? Shashank did his second comment to his question. He says, but that is a great take, Rob. This film is one of a kind, but a lot of people I know are averse to watching the film because they feel they just won't get it. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, Jim, and even for everyone in the chat, maybe that's one of the tough things. You know, this is, I'm kind of thinking about one of my comments about Tenet and a lot of Christopher Nolan films. Maybe, and I would definitely say it here. Don't think of it as a puzzle you've got to figure out. Don't try to get it. Absorb it. Be in it. Have an experience. Like in a lot of ways, this is art. This is modern, this is modern art. And I don't mean that pejoratively, but it is art. RTAF. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it may be a little bit, it may, I don't want to say inaccessible, but it's, I don't think it's bad to have a challenging movie. It's, it's sort of, it is challenging, but it's not totally, it's not totally opaque. Like you can, I think, come to your own conclusions and things like that. I mean, try watching Ironheart Huckabees. Or it sort of reminds me of that the great Joe Biden episode of Community, where the Secret Service agents are going through Abed stuff, and they say, "The Last Airbender, this isn't very good." He goes, "Where were you yesterday?" But anyway, total aside. I mean, I think it's good to have movies that aren't.
It's why I call this the film studies class if you went to Greendale Community College.
Yeah, exactly.
We get to make these references now, Jim. I'm putting it out there.
There we go. Where were we going with that? I don't mind. I don't mind the way that it came out. It's challenging, and it's and it's sort of it's. You gotta say the other thing too. It's pretty memorable. Like I wonder if it was softened at all or explained a little more.
Yeah.
And I think Vlad said that, or somebody in the chat just said 2010 not as well remembered. It's not even on TV really that I've seen. Like I just know it from memory. But whereas you will see this on.
I think I found it on Hoopla as part of my research.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Well, and I think that was exactly my point too, Jim. Was would we be talking about it if it was explained to us? Would we be talking about it? And I just don't think so. And going back to Kubrick's statement about watching it with our eyes, he really was, and as pretentious as it can be, he was trying to communicate in a film language, with the vocabulary of cinema. But he really was, and he really wanted people just to watch it and to hear it, and not to be being told it. And I'm wondering, coming kind of circling around to the idea of story here. You know what? I could almost say that it's like, okay, I looked at it and I'm kind of like, yeah, that's an honest act break. We are like, there is a story structure here, but we don't have a classic hero. It's not grounded in a human being. It's that big science fiction epic. It's humanity is the character. We're not given that. Notwithstanding DMG's smart remark, which I have to read because I think it's funny. Imagine Star Trek without exposition. Sulu would never talk. Warp Factor 2, Captain. And then that would be it. They'd just get a machine to do that. And then the machine would go crazy. We would think, boy, that machine is awesome. Why isn't he on every show?
I see
What?
DM guy. I think Dave Matthews guy instead of Dragon movie guy.
I keep thinking of DND. He's the DM,
Oh, okay.
man. You know.
DM.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. Well, coming back to the story of it, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, there's a part of me kind of going, yeah, this is almost like this is a stripped down. Would you agree with this? This is as stripped down as you could get before you're really like, oh, it's an arty tone poem. Look, colors and motion. You know, like there's like it. He really kind of stripped it down to its bare essentials and still for us to be able to say there's a narrative here.
Yeah. You know, I mean, yeah, it is funny because he doesn't overwhelm you. There's a few family relationships. Those aren't the key things. They even kill Frank Poole, unless I'm mistaken, on his birthday. You know, it's just, you know, because he gets the family phone call, and then 12 hours later he's sailing across the skies there, sort of out of control, which is such a horrifying image and situation. But it's sort of like the opposite of claustrophobia, whatever that would be. It's just like everything. I'm leaving this orbits, but I mean, there's so little in it that you can concentrate on other things, and it is that thing where almost it'd be hard to write this, I think, because you'd want to fill it up, and then it'd be more an act of editing. I think you'd take everything out and just leave it with the bare, you know, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to do that. We're going to I was going to ask you actually about elements of the story. The whole, and I didn't pick up on this before when I was watching, the ruse with Hal. I think he's playing a long game, so he knows what's going on. We've done the spoiler zone already.
Yeah. Okay,
so
I didn't, but if they haven't figured it out by now, well, we're all in trouble.
So the sequence is like, Hal or Dave, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? Do you believe any of these rumors? So he's sort of working on that, and then at some point he says the antenna's out and it's going to fail, and the other reading.
Wait a minute.
What?
That's what he did. He was wait a minute.
Or which was jarring.
Just a second. Like twice, like a stutter.
Yeah. And anyway, so at that point he
I'm
says,
going to bend your noodle even harder in a second.
The antenna's going down. We have about 72 hours. Is this for sure? Yeah, it's for sure. And they contact Earth, and they said, well, our twin HAL 9000 says there's not a problem. So I'm thinking he was already planning to do this. Oh, no, because they had the conversation, the lip-read conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think the gears were in motion a lot earlier than I realized.
You know what, Jim? He was playing the long game. He was playing Frank Poole from the get-go earlier on. And for those of you who don't know, I think this is a reasonable amount of non-canon information. Apparently, and this is something that had been discussed between Clark and Kubrick when they were really breaking the story down. Even though when the film was greenlit, as Vlad said earlier in the chat, they still didn't have an ending. But, you know, hey, it was the 60s. Sure, you can have a few $1 million. Go make us another amazing movie. But they did have the whole idea that that HAL 9000 had been giving contradictory orders, and he was trying to rationalize these contradictory orders. You know, keep up this ruse while at the same time, you know, make sure you don't tell anyone. And hey, if something happens, you got to finish the mission. That's your primary concern here, not human safety. There is this key moment. Frank drawing. And it's, can I see your pictures? Says, yeah, here you go. And he shows it to him. And then, like he's some guy who needs glasses. Oh, let me get my reading. Can you bring it closer? and he has to bring the pitchers closer. Hal was playing him right then, because how the does Hal need to see closer to his drawings? But meanwhile, a long room, two guys in the dark with just a few blinking lights lighting them, he can see and read their lips.
Oh, yeah.
Hal was in for the long con. He was setting them all up for them all to think he was just a dummy. I'm not sure he was planning on killing them. I think I agree with you. It's the lip reading that he's like, oh, jig is up.
Yeah.
I gotta kill them all. They're all, yeah, exactly. You know,
so,
but I do think Hal was being dishonest, from the get-go. Hold it closer.
Oh, that's a good point.
So,
there's
is your noodle bent, Jim?
No, that's pretty chilling. I mean, that's cold. That's ice cold. The other thing too is that if only Dave Bowman and Frank Poole had watched NFL football from the 80s and 90s, when the coaches started doing this, call for a right swing, left 3, Statue of Liberty on the back flip, give me 2 chili dogs, no onions, and hike. So they actually cover their lips because the other team has lip readers in the audience that'll read what plays they're calling, and you can often tell the guys by their eyebrows, like John Gruden, that they're actually talking. But
I want to highlight this briefly, little aside. Shashank points out the Upside Down is at 92 subscribers. Hitting 100 subscribers is kind of a bit of a milestone. I think you'd agree, Jim. It was fun to be able to say, hey, we've broken 100. So if it hasn't happened already, I second the motion Shashank is putting out here. You know what? Go visit the Upside Down's channel. Check out his channel and subscribe if you're so inclined. And let's see if we can't be part of what pushes them over 100. That would be awesome. And Shashank, thanks very much. You are a classy man. And then Shashank says, also, I'm unable to read some of the comments that Rob is reading on his screen. I wonder what's happening there. Well, I'm glad I'm reading them. All right. So, villainy of Hal. Yeah, remember, he ignores the lip sync order to pivot the pod, and then he reads their lips. Remember, they say, turn the pod. Oh, he must not be able to hear us. We're good here.
Yeah,
Hal was on top of it.
Just so you guys know, Shaw is really weird for me today, so if I go out again, I'll just try to get back on. But it's a system problem. It's not a house problem, I don't think. But I'm okay. I seem to be okay now. Cross fingers. Help me out here, Hal. But anyway. But I also wanted to mention, and we talked about it a bit earlier with the toilet instructions, the 10-step toilet instructions.
Yeah.
It's quite a funny movie in a lot of ways.
It has its moments.
It does. I'm just looking at Chicken or Ham. These mundane sort of. There's a lot of food in this movie that more than I realized. They get the little colored sort of pâtés. And it's interesting that in the final dream, the juice things. In the final dreamy sequence, the time
in his death chamber,
time flip
in his chamber of change,
the death chamber, the food is real. Like it's a full plate of. You could see it's veg.
He's got metal
meat and
implements.
2 veg.
He broke a glass.
He's got metal implements. Yeah. But it's actual food, not that sort of simulated food or whatever. But there's lots of humor. There's something that and I mentioned Stephen King before in the first 5 or 10 minutes, is that what Stephen King does is that he often juxtaposes something horrifying, like say a vampire, with something common, like a higgledy-piggledy supermarket or an Esso gas station. And he does these things, and he brings in things that we're familiar with, chains and logos and all these little aspects of modern life that make us feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then what he does is he populates that with a monster or a devil or a evil government employees or whatever. Here, space travel to me is pretty terrifying because one mistake and you're done. But up there, they get up there and there's a Hilton, there's a Howard Johnson's,
a Hojo,
a Hojo in the space station. There's breakfast. There's there's all kinds of little
cocktails.
There's cocktails at vodka at 10 in the morning or what have you.
It feels like a boring airport.
Sorta, yeah. And so there's little elements of just familiarity, little elements of humor. I love the when he signs off with his daughter, I believe, Haywood Floyd, and it says, space call $1.75, which sort of kills me. It's like, really? Is that a lot or is it subsidized? I don't know. But yeah, it was a $1.75. But yeah, just a lot of and a lot of sleeping too. Like these guys are out for, it would take a while to get where they're going, but a lot of shots of Haywood Floyd just sort of wiped right out and losing his pen and all that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the thing that Stephen King does is often that he sort of contrasts the horrifying with the mundane. And you have a little bit of this here.
It's rooted though, and it roots us in a place that we understand. So when these things happen, it's that much more frightening or visceral an experience. Richard L. and Shashank, and I'm going to put both these comments up. They're both, Shashank is talking about he doesn't think of Hal as the villain. The people who created him are the villains here of the piece. Although I'm not even sure they are. Like, in a way, here's an episode of humanity, like all these other episodes, and they're about to go through this wicked change, and they don't even know it. Richard L., though, kind of... And I think they're kind of, there's a Venn diagram where both their comments there's a lot of overlap in their comments. But Richard L. says, I think of Hal as a child gone bad, and that's maybe why it's hard to hate Hal. We have only ourselves to blame if his learning went wrong, or his instructions. In this case, it seemed to be the instructions. And yeah, especially in his death at the end, where he kind of devolves and then I'm going to sing you a song, Daisy, Daisy. It's like, it is. Like, I even get a little choked up now. And even Dave Bowman seems to have been affected as he's, like he's got to do what he has to do. But, he seems to be, sure, you can sing me that song. And it's like, he's not removing them as quickly. It's, it's a sad moment.
And visually, it's an interesting thing for us to, just the sort of the taking out of the little plastic, not discs, but the little squares and things like that. That's kind of to be able to translate something that's probably fairly complex into a little bit more of a simple visual display is kind of cool.
Yeah. Here, I'm just going to catch up on the chat a bit before we move on to the meaning.
Sure.
Which in some ways is both the toughest thing and the easiest thing of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Which, I know that's contradictory, but, going back. All right. Okay. Thanks very much, Shashank. I do appreciate that. All right. Okay. People are just commenting on our shorter versions, being positive, which is always lovely. Okay, Vlad. Saying to Richard. Okay, is 2010. Okay, these guys are talking to each other. Who could not love Abed? Now here, Walt says 2001 as art. It was the first film shown at the New York NYC's Museum of Modern Art. He's pretty sure.
Is it the Guggenheim one, I guess? Yeah. That might be the Guggenheim, which looks like the tornado.
Yeah. Is MoMA in the Guggenheim?
Oh, no, they're separate, aren't they? MoMA.
I think they
are.
That's
right,
or like two different.
Yeah. I think they're two different. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Guggenheim museums are here. This is the Guggenheim Museum. Just like there's the Peggy Guggenheim Museum in Venice, which I've been to. There's my Guggenheim flex. Oh, heck, I've been in the one in Bilbao, too. Oh, double flex. But you've been to the let's call it the real one when you guys went to New York?
Yeah, actually, you never made it there. There's just there's so much to see that I'll have to go back. But yeah, it was, New York's crazy. Washington, D.C. is nuts too. They have literally 20 museums, 20 top tier museums. That's the top tier. Then you have all the secondary museums. Yeah. It's just crazy.
It's like Paris or London. You see, it's like you're gonna miss some of the museums, and people, you missed that. It's like there are 50 others I missed that are all amazing. Shut up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Shashank, I'm gonna ask you to bring this up again if I don't remember it when we're talking about Kubrick at the end, whether or not he passed or failed, because we still have to render judgment on that. All right. Okay, these guys are still talking to each other, which is always wonderful. I think this movie has the maximum number of analysis pieces on the internet, if I'm not wrong. And yet, folks, we felt, and when I say we, not just Jim and I, you are in this as well. You thought, no, but wait, I have something to add.
That's it. Let's fill that niche.
DMG makes both a smart and an insightful remark, which is the best remarks, or smart-assed. You know, if 2001 were any more minimalist, it'd go into cinema verite and be directed by Terrence Malick. You know, that's not
a bad.
It's a great smart-ass remark, and it's kind of a. Yeah, good one. Thanks, DMG.
What was the one, the Pacific Second World War, that one that he did? Thin red line, thin blue line, thin red line.
Big red one, I think.
Big red one is that one with Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin and I think anyway, that was kind of spacey. It was like,
what a slog.
It was told from the point of view of the jungle or something. I don't know, but
Thin Red Line.
It was Thin Red Line. Okay.
Yeah. The big red one was, you're right. And an early
Lee Marvin,
a performance with Mark Hamill. And that was a great movie. Yes. I would love to do a Does It Hold Up on that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Vlad65, consider the bone as the first tool. Hell is the final tool as humans go to another level. And it is interesting. Hell is always presented longwise, much like the monolith and any other stick.
Oh, yeah.
And think about it. Now I'm adding to the conspiracy nonsense. Shashank says, okay, now we're getting into the meaning. So before I... Okay, I hope I didn't miss something here, the upside down. Oh, okay, I know what he's talking about. Never mind. Yes, let's hope we push you over the top, brother. Okay, Shashank says here, and I think this is perfect hook, hinge. This is the hinge comment to move into talking about the meaning of the piece. So with that, Jim, and what the heck, let's start with Shashank's interesting question here. To what extent do we give up control over our own reality in order to achieve the next stages of human advancement and evolution? What's your take on that? I have thoughts as well, but I want to know, I'm curious.
It's such a big question, isn't it? To what extent do we give up control over our own reality in order to? I mean,
I'm not sure it's
our own reality.
Question.
Like, is it in? I don't think it's as much. You know, if you say ours humanity, yeah. If you say ours individually, I don't think we're in that position of power. But ours humanity, that's kind of a scary one, because a lot of times you have people that are maybe not super well educated, or, you know, if you bring the business class into this, that's kind of frightening. And you know, if you're talking about military, that's even more frightening. If you're talking about something that's purely scientific, are there things that are purely scientific anymore? You know, like That's a pretty scary question, because you're always thinking about the underlying motivations as well. I mean, I'm not sure how to answer that, but I would be cautious.
I'm not sure it's, and maybe Shashank, maybe we're not understanding you, or I'm not. I think though that unlike the Matrix, the 13th floor existence, where our idea of what's real is being questioned, or even Ready Player One, which I wouldn't put on the same level. I've seen the movie, I've read the book, but I'm going to hold just in case we end up talking about it more formally, because Jim's now going to see the movie, so we might end up doing something with it. But I think this is not so much a control. It's a meditation on what is humanity. What does it mean to be human? And maybe a comment on how these things change. How, definitely at the beginning, there's some apes, to quote Charleston Heston, "You damn dirty apes." And all of a sudden they start beating on each other with tools. And that kind of is like, we're given the idea that that's the kickoff to kind of what we become. And we're still using just bigger and fancier sticks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure if it's about reality and control over our own reality. And heck, do we even have that? But I'm not sure that that's a question that's being explored in this film. It's not so much about reality as a question about what is it that makes us human, and are we at the precipice of a big change? Because certainly in the 60s, Jim, memory serves, that was a big, Joseph Campbell said, that's the biggest mythic moment of our time. I would actually argue that, we quickly took space travel for granted. Yes, we're kind of amazed. It's briefly interesting, but my cell phone has the internet. Things that came out of the space race have a lot more impact on how we look at our humanity than the actual, hey, somebody landed on the moon. Well, several white American men did. Great. Has that changed me? I don't know about that, but that computer, holy crap.
Yeah. What's the Louis C.K. line? I know he's not super popular to quote anymore, but it's that
the worst people.
Well, or also that I'm calling up, I'm making a phone call, it's going to a satellite.
Space and back.
Maybe give it a second.
Give it a minute. Yeah. It is. We're at the best, we're the worst people at the best time. You have a thing. God damn it, when is this piece of shit it's going to space and back. Give it a minute.
Give it a minute.
It's a brilliant comment, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Now, that does here, and going back to the meaning, because I think this is part of the meaning, Jim, part of the overt goal of the filmmakers, right up. From both Clark's super optimistic, hey, we're going to become better humans, to even, Kubrick's, we're going to change. Thank God, because we're all kind of awful. DMG says, amazing how prophetic the science part of the fiction 2001 was. Absolutely. I can ask Siri. Yes. I can ask Siri to use Hal's voice and play the 2001 score. I was thinking that, Jim, as I was reaching out to my Google Mini, and I'm like, okay, it's not quite as reactive, but it's, hey, insert company name or whatever it is for Alexa, or, it's that what we can reach out to is mind-blowing, and it kind of has that feel in 2001.
Yeah.
The video calling, well, what are we doing now? It was not like they were limited by the technology of their time. Some of the fashion cues are way off. Some of them are like, boy, I could wear that. I'd love to wear that suit. I'd love to be in the shape that suit would look good.
You have to run upside down a few times.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or the boxing, that weird kind of boxing.
Oh, yeah. Uppercut. There's video on YouTube, guys, of Kubrick directing him. Like, explicitly directing him. Uppercut. You know, that was a thing.
Yeah.
No one does that now.
Nope.
I shouldn't say no one, but it is weird. Oh, apparently Siri won't. But I think that's kind of getting into the meaning. Part of it was the super optimistic view of the future. And that kind of futurist sort of, hey, technology is going to solve a lot of things. And, of course, nothing about the climate. Like, the obsession was, and rightly so, nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war. This was the height of the Cold War. Those tensions, which are so well played out in that little drinks moment, that little coffee drink catch up in the lobby moment, hotel lobby BS. You know, and like you said, the brushback. Thank you very much, DMG, for giving us that technical term. But yeah, you're crowding the plate, buddy. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You know, in that.
Back off.
Yeah, back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was like, but it was in general, I think, an optimistic movie. Like, it very much believing in progress with a capital P, even if it may have a less than positive opinion about us as individuals. More than willing to use the stick. You know, look, we got the stick. Let's beat people with it. Sure. We'll get to lever and moving things and stuff later. Right now, I can thump that taper, and I can thump that guy.
They actually hit the tapers. The mime hominid actors actually smack a couple. I thought, ooh.
I don't know. Maybe the tapers are getting a little too close. They've been bit by a couple of tapers. Like,
it's a brushback. Get away from me, world's largest rodent. Bam.
Okay, what? Is this a bicycle built for two? Well, I don't know. Or is it the space station, Space Station 5, which is what they were on at the beginning? Is that a bicycle built for two? Or a unicycle built for two? Ooh. Witty. Not as witty as DMG, and Shank even points that out. Well, but Jim, what would you say is the biggest theme of this film?
Well, evolution. But what is it saying about evolution? I think there's some, you know, I don't know that it's entirely. I think I don't think it's entirely optimistic. I think, it boils down humans as weaponized hominids. From the very start, from the dawn of, was it Dawn of Man? Was the first chapter?
Dawn of Man.
The Dawn of Man.
Stick.
Yeah, and so it sort of says that, like a lot of things, these are the things that propel us forward, just the different kinds of weapons. But at the same time, other things fall in civilization, imagination. I think it's a commentary on the pattern of evolution that humans generally experience, and it can be pretty sobering. It doesn't come from a very it's not about kindness. It's more about sort of defending yourself and attacking others. But it's interesting that the big change from the apes, the early hominids, to the mankind, men and women, is that it's how they go about it that changes. And how it's disguised as well.
And there is now, first of all, I think let's highlight Vlad's 65's comment, Walt's comment on evolution. It is scary. One draft had the Star Child destroying humanity with A-bombs as we go forward. And you even see, again, that conversation about this, about the arms race and about that tension between the Soviet Union and the United States, which is really kind of, you know, the focus, especially, you know what, here I'll get a little quasi-Marxist, especially the focus of the petty bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie. You know what, not fucking, pardon my French, but fucking Vietnam, which in 68 they were amping up. You know what? They were, I think they were already, the war had gotten outside of Vietnam's borders, like by then. Johnson was lying. Like it basically, by the time this film came out, it had broken Johnson's presidency. I think within a month or two of this happening, he said he wasn't going to run again. You're coming up to that summer of change and violence, like throughout the Western world and Asia, and like the whole world was going through this massive class conflict. And these guys are, you know, it's like, well, but I'm an affluent American living in London. I'm worried about nukes because that's going to affect me, you know. So I think there's a limited view that there were, not to say that that's not something to worry about. You know, the Students for a Democratic Society were worried about nukes as well, you know, but yeah, that Vietnam doesn't come up, that, you know, that no metaphors are there. Like they really, no, I believe Johnson. It's just a Bush war. It's a police action. It'll be taken care of.
That they tied, we tied with them. We tied with the Vietnamese. But the, you know, the other thing too is that 68. So yeah, and I often think this is that, was that big, that picture of the moon, Daybreak, I think it's called, the famous one, the picture of the moon that from the spaceship. While that was happening, you know,
or are you thinking from the Earth, like in 69?
Sorry, the Earth, the picture of the Earth.
Yeah.
That
every teacher had it in the 70s prominently displayed. I don't think that was like the picture for the first, from kindergarten through grade 6. Every teacher had one.
While they took that, you know, down below, they had people shooting each other to death in Vietnam and elsewhere. But also, while 2001 was out, this was also the height, probably, of the space program. I mean, they landed on the moon in
a year later.
69. And so this is the height of all those things together. And I think it
and that's the optimistic part of this film. Like, and part of, I think, what they're communicating, while all these companies were involved, why the head of NASA visits, it's like, this is the future we think we're building for our children. You know, space stations, stations on the moon, and trips to Jupiter, or in the book originally to Saturn.
But it was kind of fletching about space travel and just sort of dangers and stuff while the program was essentially at its height, which is kind of interesting too. It's like that they're happening at the same time. You know, you're watching a movie while probably Americans or whoever, Americans, Russians, or up there, and you know, landing on the moon. So that's kind of interesting. Is that contemporaneousness of it, if I can be allowed to use that word?
Contemporaneous of its creation. You know. And I do like. Yes, you can kind of see things they were worried about and things they weren't worried about. But I do think in general, this is mostly a positive film. It is the birth of the next kind of idea of humanity. I think actually...
Just about, just one little thing about banality. Apparently when Arthur C. Clarke and Kubrick met initially, and it says this in the Wikipedia thing, so I'm not giving anything that's not accessible to anybody else, but I love this detail. First of all, they thought Arthur C. Clarke was basically a hobbit living in Sri Lanka, or hermit or something, like he just was a recluse. But when they met to discuss it, they got together at Trader Vic's, the old tiki chain restaurants, and they had a nice couple of Mai Tais and some
when you see him visiting set, another stylish guy in
Honolulu
a nice
Fort.
suit,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
But I would love to be, hi, what can I get you gentlemen something to eat? You know, or,
Yeah.
you know, like being the waiter on deck that night.
I want to catch up on the chat, mostly just Shashank and DMG are going back and forth about reality and giving up on reality and what about reality. Yeah, basically they don't give a crap of what we think. They're having their own adventure on this. They're agreeing with each other 100%, and good on you guys. You know what? I just wanted to note that. We're not going to jump into your discussion, but you have the adventure. Cool. All right. Now, Vlad, okay, DMG. Love Louis C.K. You know, of course, because you're not a young woman comment going, what? Oh, Mr. C.K., you wanted me to, oh, that's fucking charming.
I mean, you know, separate the artist from the
Comedy's
art.
bang on. Yeah, comedy's bang on, and that is still one of my favorite bits of all time, you know? But I can see why it's going to be a long time if we see another Louis C.K. bit. I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In part because
he's out there.
It is that image becomes attached to the artist, right? Especially a live performer. You know, it's not like you know, you think J.K. Rowling or like even this, as I was watching, it's like he doesn't have a horrible reputation with women like some directors do. But there's still that Shelley Long story. Although it looks like Jack Nicholson, after a while, is like, oh, you know, he wouldn't read his lines that he was giving because it's like, it's going to change up to the point. They're all exhausted. They're all stretched out. But, you know, he had a particularly bad time with, not with her. Like he was awful to her. By then he's like, I get to do whatever I want and I'm going to make you miserable and call you down in front of an entire crew of professionals. You know, but he's dead. This was made years before. It's easier for me to make that disconnect, you know, like, you know, but it does bear, it's still worthy of comment. Now, Vlad65 says, remember the machine stops. Tech dies and future humans are screwed. I do not. I am not familiar with this work.
No, neither am I.
I'll have to look it up. Thanks for bringing it up. All right, Shashank, agreeing with this. Oh, Shashank is and DMG have allowed us back into their conversation. What do you guys take on the ending? And Rob, to remind you, do you think Kubrick was self-indulgent in this movie? Jim, why don't you take part one of this conversation, take on the ending?
Yeah, that's the part that I find is sort of intimidating, and a little bit, just a little bit intimidating to talk about because it is kind of out there. Like it's I don't know another movie that has something like this, but he just goes. He sort of goes whole hog. In a way, the thing that I noticed when I was watching it is like, is this necessarily like the lead up to it? Almost the whole thing feels like a prologue to a bigger movie, and not 2010, but you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like, it ends where it's actually supposed to begin, and we're supposed to, you know, realize what's going to come out of the Star Child, right? Or what's going to happen with the Star Child. But anyway, there's a lot of elements. It's a funny movie because you have the first 15 minutes, and that's the Dawn of Man. Then you have the middle section, and then probably the last,
which is the closest to a movie it ever comes.
And then the last 15 minutes is that when he runs into the monolith or close to the monolith, and he goes through the tunnel of light or what have you, and then he ends up in this room. And the room is very, I've heard descriptions of it like it's always part of a human zoo, and that it's some sort of time loop, and a few other things. But um, that they make him evolve into the Star Child. So that's sort of what I get out of it. But that's the part of it that I've always had. I'm willing to accept it, but it's the part that I've always sort of been a little bit thrown by. I'd have to say.
Well, and I've got Katie Fowler's comment here. She didn't care for the ending, and a lot of people don't.
Hey, Katie.
I am wondering if Jim. I thought about this because I really did. I was looking at the structure of the film, and you could have literally ended the film, had a perfectly good, straightforward film after he, lobotomizes Hal. You get on the stick back to home base. You kind of go, okay, what do you want me to do? The machine went crazy and I'm the only one here. And maybe it's, hey, we're going to bring you back, or you're going to move forward with this, or whatever. Much like taking out the Dawn of Man, if you took it out, it wouldn't be the movie we're talking about. As weird, and I can't say I didn't find it unsettling. I don't think I found it unsettling then. I do look at it a more, let's say, a capital or a small r religious lens. The gods are now stripping him of his humanity and he's being reborn. And the exact thing I don't get too wound up about, but I can see why Katie didn't like it. It's weird. I cannot think of this movie without it, but it kind of needs this weird ending because it had this weird setup, and otherwise what the hell were we doing here? But it's not, at the same time, it's also not, it leaves so many questions open.
Yeah.
But you can't call them loose ends. It really is more, well, what does this mean? And so I think we can touch on, Jim, Shashank's question, and maybe this is time to kind of move into the end game. Before we do that,
and I just want to make one comment before we do that.
Throw down.
Oh,
brother.
now, okay, sure. Yeah. So I just wrote down a few things during the ending. I noticed there seemed to be Gainsborough pictures on the wall. And I'm sort of wondering the thought process.
And the green that's so clearly attached to his ideas of death.
Yeah.
And,
what would this human, hey, superstellar being, what would this human like? Oh, they all like French architecture and Gainsborough, and they like eating meals with cutlery. It's sort of these things that have been sort of set up for him. I was also making, as an old Doctor Who fan, I was not too old, actually. I'm sort of the David Tennant era there. But humans are temporal, and maybe the creatures that we're dealing with aren't. So, we take for granted that we're temporal beings. We exist in time. So that, there's several, he progresses, right, in that last, that sequence. So that's something. And then that finally, the transition from that to Star Child is old Dave Bowman is lying in bed, and then he sees he's got a personal monolith. Yeah. So I was thinking, it made me think of Depeche Mode's personal Jesus. But is that just for him? Is that the instrument that they use to make him evolve into the Star Child? I think it is, but.
I think that's exactly it. It's like the trigger. It's like, okay, much like those apes, we're able to make Moonwatcher into a clubbing machine. Now's your time. You know what was interesting about the end that I noted this time in watching it? Walking through, it's okay, every time we're in Dave Bowman's point of view, you know, until we see the other one. And then we are put in his point of view as he looks around, and then he sees another older Dave Bowman. And then we're in his point of view, and there's this weird kind of handoff, a handoff of us. Like it's really the viewer who's being put through these stages, right? Until and I think that's, and going to, and Dory, I have not forgotten, because I'm laser focused on this. I am setting up a comment later about indulgence of a director. But I think that's what's happening there. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to get into the whole, ooh, what does it all mean? You know, maybe that's just, again, it leaves us with the question of what does it mean? And that's the goal. Like, to give us a real ending. It is an ending. It's a solid one, but it's, you're automatically wondering what's next, and not in a sequel way. Like, but in a, well, what does this mean? What is humanity's next step? We see a rebirth of some sort, you know?
And I think it's Vlad pointed out that how else would it end? Like, can you imagine?
You're absolutely right, Katie, by the way. Sorry.
Just how else would this end? Like, it would, Dave, you know, land, he goes, okay, time for lunch, or, you know, like, lands back
exactly
on the,
it.
you know,
we could have ended
I could use
after
a beer.
Lobotomy. Like, in any other movie, it'd be, okay, I've beat the bad guy, now we just got to recover. And sometimes it's literally, you know, a radio call back home. All right, we're sending a rescue mission, or, okay, you can go back into the thing. We're sending another crew out. You can join them. There would be some kind of quickie little, okay, tie some loose ends and the movie's over. But you couldn't do that with this film. You have to have the weird ending. Everything, because of the setup, because of what the script narrative, I think this is the only ending you could have. Like it or not. And I don't know anyone who goes, wow, that was an awesome ending, unless they were high AF. So in a way, I'm with Katie. Like, I disagree. She kind of implies in her Infinity War that it's a bad ending. I'd say it's a brilliant ending. It's just not an ending we are maybe not even meant to enjoy. That'd be the second one, right? I disagree with.
That's the second Avengers movie?
It's it's Infinity War is the first part of the Infinity bullshit thing. It's the second last.
So where Thanos walks away triumphant, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which I thought was a BS ending, because it had no stakes. Any of the people who disappeared, you're just like, well, no, there's going to be another movie with them.
I have to say though that
no one.
If you drew me after watching that in the theater, I'd be like those cartoon character with the cloud above it. Like, it did. You were like, oh,
it's a ripoff. No stakes ending.
Summer
bullshit ending.
Movie
Give
of the
us
summer.
one real death, and Gamora was not it. And then they still retconned her back in with the bullshit timeline thing. So it's like, oh, it's like a sitcom. Will they fall in love again? Or when a bionic woman lost her memory and didn't know that she had fallen in love with the bionic man.
Ooh, I'd watch
Deep
that.
70s cut, baby. That was the thing that happened. That was the whole setup for the bionic woman.
Didn't the $6 million man see the Sasquatch?
I'm sure he did too. I don't know.
Talk about Kubrick.
Here, I think
that's a Kubrick-worthy story.
There's some great comments in here, but we're also coming up on 3 hours, a record for us, but it is a 2.5-hour movie, and one of the most talked about, deepest, argued about films since film.
And people are still here
motion
on
pictures.
People are still here on a work day Monday.
We gotta kind of give some respect for that. So, Jim, why don't you here? I'm going to. Damn, there's been some great comments here. I'm gonna take this off. Jim, why don't you let's hand it over to you, brother.
Sure.
Why don't you tell us? Sorry, I'm trying to find a way that I can stay on the screen. I don't think I can. It's all about you, Jim. Bear with me.
Sure.
I can make this work. I can make this all work. All right, Jim, what are we doing next week?
Well, we're taking a little bit of a break from our usual standard fare in that talking about movies, we're going to be talking about television. So we're actually looking at Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy. Just kidding. WandaVision. Although Stanley Tucci is a hell of a charming host, and I highly recommend that show, especially because we can't really travel. But WandaVision is our show next week, and wait for the comments to pile up.
Yeah,
because it'll be done, and we'll be able to sort of. It's a little bit of an experiment for us. So.
Yep.
And
folks, we're hoping to put together a bit of a panel. We do have at least one for sure guest host who's going to join us, and hopefully we'll get a couple other folks and try and get a bit of a panel on. And so stay tuned for more information. But of course, that will be, as always, 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Sunday, March 7th. Yes, it'd be March 7th. Universal Coordinated Time -6. I also
happy March 5th first, everyone.
Yep. I also want to I'm going to plug this book again. There's a link in the description under what we're now calling basically Jim and I now call the Jim and Rob Film Studies bookstore. And our next several movies are under a regularly updated current syllabus. So there you go. You can tell people, oh, it was for a course. It was a big lab for a course, a big lecture for a course. All right, Jim, let's get into, you know what? There's so much here that we're missing in the chat. It just, which is a bummer. And it's just some of these. Okay, sorry, I got to put up one more smart-ass remark from DMG because it just, damn, he's on his game. He should be like our band leader, Jim. Just every now and then we go over it, and he does his thing, and then
Dave Matthews.
Folks, Shashank, actually, the logline I wrote and said at the beginning, very similar to a lot of the log lines that had come out. I just felt they were lamer, and I thought mine was better. This is one of the few times where I'm like, I'm really proud of that log line. I really kind of captured the BS that it is, and there's still a bit of a pitch in it. Okay, folks, what I do, so let's come back to Jim. Jim, why don't we talk about, before we get into final thoughts, let's talk about the director. I'm desperate to answer Shashank's question, because I think it's a bang-on question about, a director being self-indulgent. But first, first of all, what are your thoughts on this film from Kubrick's perspective, and did he pass or fail? And was he being self-indulgent?
I think he was being self-indulgent, but I think I see it as a controlled self-indulgence. So it's not like Joel Silver directing Batman indulgent, fueled by whatever recreational stimulus that he needed. But so yeah, it's indulgent, sure, but it's part of. That's kind of the point. It seems very visionary, like the kind of visionary that you can't. That's not written at a committee table or
that self-indulgent prick made a great film.
Yeah, and it is over 50 years old, and we're still talking about it as if it was a new movie, and it looks great. It looks like it could be a new movie. I don't think you could make that movie these days, but I think he had a vision, as difficult as it probably was to carry to fruition, and he delivered it, and we're still talking about it. So yeah, he did. He did his job. Pass.
Okay. And let's slip this one in before I make my comments on that. quickly, does this film hold up?
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right. Right. Oh,
That was a
good.
space.
But I
that
do
was a
like the
space
delay. Like, oh, are you talking to me?
It does hold up, Dave.
Okay. I'll take, and maybe this will kind of bring it full circle. Start with Shashank's question about self-indulgence. I actually agree with him. I think a lot of times directors can be incredibly self-indulgent. I think J.J. Abrams is one of the most self-indulgent jerks. Jerks. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I think he's a self-indulgent director. I think what he did in the last Star Wars movie is a perfect example of that. He's just gonna put in his friends, throw some nonsense at the fans, take my money and my time. The bullshit.
Yep.
Whereas this is kind of like the way you put it, Jim. In my crass comment, I did mean it. It's like, yeah, there's some moxie on this guy. No, you're going to listen to this weird music. And then I will have this weird opening. And then we're going to do this thing with this mime troupe. Like if I just described that to you as I'm describing it to you now, like that's the first you would have meant, oh, I don't want some artist self-indulgent crap. But you watch it, you experience it, and you have strong feelings throughout the film, especially at the end. That's like that's where that self-indulgence does work for us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I give this guy a pass with A+ with an asterisk that we talked about in First Thoughts. Is it for everyone?
Yeah.
No. But you're right, Jim. I love the way you put it. We're still talking about this movie 50 years later. And I think there's a couple of nuggets in here that someone else may not have commented on in our conversation here and in the chat, because we are kind of a weird sort of DIY, no-cost film studies class, like a survey class. First year, nothing too heavy, no papers required.
Yeah.
To answer that question I asked you, does it hold up? Yeah, it holds up in spades. Like, wow, does this hold up?
And we're not talking about it in a condescending sort of way, like you might like that was pretty good for a silent movie, or that was
we're
pretty
not
good
qualifying it.
Yeah, no, we're talking about it like it's a current work, or it's as valid today as it was back then.
No, and that's kind of remarkable. I don't think we've had a lot of those that we've looked at over the last year. So, why don't we, let's, I think this is a perfect time for final thoughts. Folks, you had some great comments in the chat. I want to, and here's the bummer. I've got to cut things. So I'm not even going to be able to come back to some of this stuff because I cut the front so that people who find this can actually catch up. So what I'm going to do, with your permission, Jim, if you'll indulge me, is I'm going to just quickly throw up, and folks, hang tough here. I'm going to throw up some of these amazing comments because even I want to come back and think on them and mull on them. And who knows, maybe Jim and I can do some sort of weird little sidebar. Hey, Jim and Rob talk about the comments we didn't get to in the movie because we're about to break the 3-hour mark and you guys are talking. So I'm going to work my way back. Vlad65, this is a great comment about self-indulgence. Katie Fowler showing DMG that there's not just one wit in the chat. That's a good one. And then DMG, hats off. Oh, wait. Hats off to Katie Fowler. Good one. Vlad65. And like I said, I'm just putting these things up mostly just so that in the post, Jim and I can kind of jump on them and see if we can make something of it, or at least that I can see what you guys said. Okay.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to say.
Oh, continue. Yeah.
I was just gonna say hi, Annie. That's Vlad's better half.
Oh,
and just a quick note to Vlad and company and Annie. I don't suppose she's got a second name, but I did watch so far one episode of Tokyo Diner.
How
Midnight
could
Diner.
you like The Rise of Skywalker upside down? Sorry, continue, Jim.
Midnight Diner, and yeah, it was really good, and I'll definitely watch more. So I meant to email you today, and I totally forgot, but yeah.
I'm going to answer this quickly, Shashank, and then Jim, I want your answer as I work through the other comments. Guys, one film to rewatch: Star Wars or 2001? Star Wars, baby. Jim?
Yeah,
you only have one film to rewatch. Which one?
There's a scene in New Girl where Winston Bishop has just come back from playing basketball in Lithuania. He's trying to catch up with all the pop culture. So they say, "What are you watching?" I've mentioned this before. I'm watching The King's Speech and The Human Centipede simultaneously. So that's my thing. Watch them simultaneously.
I am. Okay. DMG. More self-indulgent, Kubrick or Zack Snyder with the new Justice League cut? I so desperately want to jump on this one, Jim, but I think we got to wait for it to come out because I want to save all my potential vitriol or mea culpa. I was wrong about Zack Snyder for when it comes out. I don't think I'll be saying any mea culpa, but so if that's cool with you, DMG, let's just hang tough. Okay. All right. I'm just, again, I want to put this stuff up. And thanks, guys. Oh, a lot of, okay.
Never under that. Don't get them started.
Richard L. The longer the flick, the longer the chat. Yeah. This is a good comment, Jim. I'll leave for you to read to the crowd. I remember this moment as well.
Oh yeah, Jim, when we saw Avengers at the theater, we heard someone behind us say to their partner at the end, I'm sorry that wasn't a very good birthday gift. Yeah, it was a little bit of a rain cloud, a drawn rain cloud over the head.
Such a bullshit end. Like, it kind of redeems itself in the, well, it is part one of a two-parter, but still, there should have been a more visceral. But I think there's been a few of these franchise things where they split it and they're like, you're not really giving me much to work with here. Like, you have to give them credit. It was a big swing, that we often talk about. Pretty big swing and a bit of a chance they took. And well, I mean, you're saying that they used mostly secondary characters or whatever, but yeah, it just, you left the place, it was like a sour burp ending, kind of not very pleasant. Oh, I like that sour burp ending. That's a great, that should be, that's awesome. Okay, I think we've answered the upside Dan's comment way back. Did you guys not like Infinity War's ending because it was a cliffhanger? No, we actually didn't feel it hung. It was like, if it was a cliff, it was like a curb. It's like, who left a trip hazard? Who left this pylon here? I could have hurt myself. Yeah, and I don't think we're primed for that kind of ending these days as well. So that it could be on us. I don't know, but yeah. Tricky one. Okay, I think we're finally caught up here. Okay, if Stanley Kubrick directed a Star Trek movie about the Borg, would he have called it Kubrick's Cube? Or just Kubrick? I don't know if he would. Woo! Good one, Jim. I don't know if he would have called it. I think we would have. Yeah. Actually, we're demonstrating it. We've now created a movie in our minds called Kubrick. All right, Jim, final thoughts. Lay down, brother.
Just when you were listing Stanley Kubrick's other works there, I was thinking, oh yeah, he did that, and he did that, and he did that. And so I'd sort of be in, like, and I've seen a lot of them, but it's been a while. Paths of Glory with Kirk Douglas, and you got a few others, The Shining, of course, and Barry Lyndon, and he's a guy that I sort of need to reacquaint myself with, I think, especially after watching this. But yeah, this one was it was good to see after, say, 20 years. It moved well, and it still has a lot to give audiences, I think. I'd be cautious with who you'd recommend it to, but I'd still recommend it.
Yeah. I think, and actually one of the great things about the show, about what we do, is I might have a pretty firm idea when I've ended the movie, but I still find it can be modified a bit in talking to you guys, in talking to you, Jim, in having to kind of think through it all over again. And one of the things I thought I might be kind of hard on is, boy, it's self-indulgent, and what about this and what about that? But in the end, I'm like, no, it deserves the props it gets. Even though, like you say, Jim, I agree with you. I couldn't. Is it worth your time? For the right person, and a big underline on that. Yeah, it's worth his time, but maybe not hers, but maybe hers. I think that's one of the things. You know what? It does forget to, it did pass the baby test. All right. And
yes,
then
good one, yeah.
I'm just going to throw some stuff. If babies could survive in space. Well, it survived the trip all the way back to Earth. It seemed to be blinking and everything. Shawshank. All right. Okay, folks. What I'm now going to do, Jim, I hope you can stick around. I know it's late, like crazy late, even for us. And folks, thank you all very much for your patience, that you stuck around as long as you did. But yeah, Jim, I'll send you off to the green room now, and see you in a couple of minutes. Oh my goodness, that's funny. All right, everybody. Once again, I want to first of all just remind everyone about next week and WandaVision. Also, almost forgot, tomorrow night, Jim, myself, and Cody from the Brock Upside are going to get together because we're going to look at the predictions we made about the Golden Globes. We're going to review and see how on or far off we were. And plus, if there's anything insane that happened, we'll probably make fun of it for a bit. So yeah, feel free to join us right back here at 9:30 tomorrow evening, Monday evening. 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Universal Coordinated Time, offset -6. And then, of course, next week, we're going to be here for an awesome WandaVision show. And I think you guys are just going to freaking love it. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And yeah, what might be our first panel. So, folks, thank you all very, 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 very much. First of all, Katie, Richard, Vlad, Walt, and Annie. Great to see you guys here. Great to see the Balmoral Street Researcher regulars coming in. The Upside, Dan. If we didn't get you over 100, it was not for lack of trying. Andrew Masters, thanks for popping in, even though it may have been just a pop by. Thanks for coming by. Always nice when people can pop in on a party. Shawshank, of course, one of our longest, dearest fans and supporters and collaborators. And we got to collaborate again. I still think of The Three Idiots. It's such a great movie. DMG, thanks for bringing the wit and the insight. you're a perfect guy to and we're glad we can call you a friend of the show. Who am I missing here? I got Vlad, I got Shashank, Ahmed, Jelly Duck 100. Thanks again for popping by. As I mentioned Richard, I mentioned Katie, I got DMG, I got Vlad, got the Upside Dan. I'm sure I got Andrew Masters. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but you know what, guys? Thank you all so much for supporting us, for coming in. Don't forget to smash that like button. Of course, I didn't even get Jim. Jim, can you ring a bell? Can we get you to ring the bell?
Is that coming through?
It is coming through. Looks like everything's just operating a lot slower. Okay, back to the green room. All right, notification bell, blah, 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 blah. Folks, thank you. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think it's time to, you know what? Let's turn down the tunes and get the credits up, I think. Bye for now.
I've been in your world.